We call the Thursday, November 16th business meeting of Narberth Borough Council to order. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any agenda additions or changes? All right. And the comment is that I am going to appoint our new council member, Mark Samuelson, to the Infrastructure Committee for the remainder of the year. Mayor, do you have a report?
Nothing. We already have a full agenda other than wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving week. I hope you all enjoy time with your family and friends, and be thankful for the good things that are in our life and our world. That's it.
All right. So before we begin public comment, we have a representative from JP Mascaro who is here. JP Mascaro is the company that bid on our trash RFP. So Mr. DeGennaro is here to talk a little about that bid. Yeah, why don't you come forward? And then we will open public comment to everybody after that time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, do we want to let folks know, when you say public comment, I'm going to write down some themes and then we'll direct any questions at the end.
I think the microphone's off. You just gotta click the button at the top.
I don't think, other than that, you won't have a problem hearing me. Well, good evening, thank you. My name is Al DeGennaro, and I'm Deputy General Counsel for JP Mascaro & Sons. I'm pleased to be here this evening. Hopefully, when I leave this meeting, we'll have a contract. Although I'm the Deputy General Counsel, I'm involved as much in the business aspects of our company as I am in the legal department. I've been with the company over 32 years, so I have and learned a thing or two about the solid waste industry. And I'm happy to talk to you this evening about the issue you're faced with in terms of making an award. But first I want to tell you a little bit about JP Mascaro & Sons. It's a family-owned and operated business. It's a typical American success story. Started out as a one-truck operation by the late Mr. Mascaro Sr., and 50 years later, we probably have about 900 employees. We have four landfills, 3 transfer stations, 3 recycling facilities, 3 compost centers, a yard waste facility, and our crown jewel right now is our Total Recycle, which is a total automated state-of-the-art single-stream recycling facility I'll talk to you about in a minute. We've been in business for 50 years. The 3rd generation is involved. It's a family business. We're not going anywhere. We like to think that we have the resources of a national public company, but yet we have the touch of a local family business. You can pick up the phone and talk to the president of our company. And frankly, we like to say we answer to our customers and our Main Street folks as opposed to Wall Street. We're not a public company. And I mention that because I think there's a local touch to that is important. Our headquarters is right up the road. When you mail a check and pay a bill to JP Mascaro & Sons, it goes to Montgomery County, has a large number of employees in Montgomery County, and the revenue stays in Montgomery County. As far as our industry is concerned, as I said, we're not a national public company. We're not nationwide, but I can tell all of you that in this region, we probably have the best infrastructure of anyone. Within reach, we have our own landfill, we have a recycling center, we have a transfer station, and we have a hauling division. So we're firmly situated to provide service to you in the borough as we do many other communities. I know one of the things on your mind is the price of what's happened in our industry. I gave you folks a letter about a week ago. I outlined some things that have affected what's transpired in our industry, and I made a little outline for you with bullet points because I've been with the company 32 and a half years, and I've never seen times like this. The pandemic obviously impacted our company and our industry astronomically. Just to give you an idea, in 2020, which was I think the last year that you went out to bid, your 3-year contract, 21, 22, and 23. So you have to keep in mind that when people submitted bids to this solicitation that you're coming on the end now with your current provider, Republic, those numbers were calculated and bid on in the middle to late 2020. No one had any idea what was going to take place over the next 3 years. Interest rates, you see what's happening with interest rates in my letter. I'm just going to go over some things that I think are relevant to give you an idea of why these costs have gone in the direction they've gone. Interest rates have gone up 235%. Our wages have gone up 65%. In the 32 and a half years that I worked for my company, I never saw an 18-month period where we had to get 3 raises. I had to do that because during the pandemic it was so difficult to get people to work for a variety of reasons, whether it was health, whether it was family situation, whether it was staying home because they thought it was more financially attractive to stay at home and go to work. So those wages affected our bottom line. The trucks have gone up about 20 to 25%. What was about a $250,000 truck that you see coming down your neighborhood now picking up trash is between $300,000 and $325,000. Steel, all the parts, everything has increased. You've seen what happened in fuel in the last 3 years. When you add to it that it's diesel fuel, fuel costs have gone up about 50%. Our insurance costs, as I'm sure you see your homeowner's policy, every year in the solid waste industry, you have to have significant levels of insurance to protect yourself, to protect your employees, and to protect your customers. Our insurance costs have gone up about 35%. The recycling processing costs. You hear people say, well, they don't really recycle everything. I can tell you, we spent $20 million on this recycling plant, and every recyclable item that we pick up that's not contaminated, we recycle. We take it through our facility, we process it, we ship it out for reuse. The reason why the costs have gone up is about 2 or 3 years ago, one of the biggest importers of recyclable materials was China, and China stopped accepting the recyclable materials from the United States. They claimed they did it because recyclables were contaminated, but we had our own suspicions, and I think what you're seeing now with the China economy, they really didn't have a demand for recyclables. So the problem with recyclables is that while it's an excellent thing to do in terms of growing greener, protecting the environment, and you're mandated by Act 101 to recycle by your population, it costs a little more to handle those recyclables. And lastly, the disposal costs. Landfills, trash steam plants. When I came to work for the company in 1991, there were at least 300 or 400 landfills in Pennsylvania. Now there's less than 50. They're very capital intensive. They're big, very expensive to manage, and the leachate is a problem. There's all issues with regard to landfill management that they're environmentally sound, but they're more expensive now to manage. So all those costs have impacted the bottom line. So the state of our industry is that it was in a turmoil for about 18 months, and frankly, we haven't been immune to the cost increase, but we're insulated from some of these problems because of our network right here. We're not nationwide, so we don't own 3 or 400 landfills like your current Hall or Republic or Waste Management, but the landfills, our network right here, we really have the best infrastructure of any company in the solid waste industry, and we think we're able to compete the best, and there's a reason why we have more municipal contracts in Montgomery County than any other hollow. But what's happened is there seems to be, at least with respect to the public companies, from my observation, a de-emphasis on these municipal-wide contracts for a couple of reasons. Number one, although we've recovered, and probably are hard to believe, but I can honestly say, I think we're better now than we were before the pandemic in terms of our workforce and what we had to do. Our competitors still struggle with labor. There's still a supply chain issue in terms of parts. The national public companies are always concerned about estimating their costs going forward. We have our own infrastructure right here, so we think we have a better handle on what the cost will be. I gave you a list attached to my earlier letter of about 30 municipalities that we were successful on. On about 15 of those, half of them, or over half of them, we were the only bidder. These are difficult times, and other companies in our industry, I think, are struggling to service their existing customers. If you read the paper, you'll see some local companies are having issues. So all that with the confluence of what's happening in the economy, right now, to some companies, the municipal market is not so attractive to them. Because when you sign a contract for municipality and put your imprimatur on it, it's a 3 or 5 year contract. I'll go to some places and some residents will say, well, why do we have to have a contract? Why can't we just let everyone do for fend for themselves. Well, first of all, there's nothing more important in your borough than public safety and sanitation. You don't need me to tell you that. And if you didn't have a township-wide contractor, you'd have people disposing of trash in any number of ways, whether it's improper littering, taking and dumping it in commercial places. You want to have a township-wide contract, and when you put a number out, that's your number for 3 years. So the price that your current vendor bid in 2020, I can assure you, just like what we bid in 2020, we're not making money on the contracts that are ending in 2023. We're tickled pink to get them over with because we're incurring all these additional costs that we didn't factor in. So there's a number of reasons why the costs have gone up, and with what's going on in the industry, I'm not surprised. We bid this like we're going to be competing with a number of competitors because we never know when someone's going to bid and not going to bid. But as I said, the industry's changing. I've been to municipalities up and down the eastern part of the country. I was up in Nazareth Borough and up in Lackawanna County the other night, and it's not unusual. This is a very capital-intensive business right now, and it's a challenge. So that's as to why I believe you only received one bid, and as to why you're priced. But I wanted to go over this outline if I could. If I'm taking too much time, I'll try to move it along quicker. But if you look at the second page, I wanted to give you a flavor for what's happened in Montgomery County and recently awarded contracts over the last 18 to 24 months. We serviced the borough of Sowerton. They experienced a 96% increase. I want to jump over Whitpain. That's a lawn waste. It's unbelievably increased, but you can see that's gone up. West Costco was a collection contract like yours. It's went up 146%. The borough of Bridgeport, 81%. Borough of Rockledge, 113%. You're at this number. We currently service 12 municipalities in Montgomery County. We have more municipal-wide contracts than any of our competitors, public or private, in the county. And there's a reason for that. It's because of our infrastructure. We have 7 boroughs. This would make the 8th borough. So we know what it's like to collect in a borough where it's tight, you have small alleys. If you have alleys, you have areas you need to be concerned about. And our depot is in Bridgeport. We'll be coming right down from Bridgeport, not much further than where Republic is now, right on the 202. That's where the materials will be transferred. Your material, your trash, your refuse will go to our Pioneer Crossing landfill. It's a state-of-the-art landfill. If you check with DEP, our compliance record is excellent. If it's not the best, it's one of the best in the state. I've shown you the municipalities that we service, and there was another list I gave you that showed you all those increases up and down the eastern part of the state. But this is what's happening in the industry, and you folks buy gas, you go to the grocery store, you get your electric bill, you get your water bill, everything's gone up. The price of new cars have gone up. You have a good set of bid specifications. This is the 3rd time I've been involved in reviewing your bids. We weren't low 3 years ago. 6 years ago, we were low on one option, but we weren't successful. You went with a different option, and we're optimistic that you'll recognize that we would be an asset for you in your community. And most importantly, or at least tied to that, is I know Dartmouth is really interested in recycling, and this total recycle plant we have is one of the, not only the most technologically advanced, but we're the only ones right now that are recycling this really interesting material called flexible packaging. So I attached that to all of your letters when I gave it to you. We were in a nationwide search. We were awarded a grant by a group of Fortune 100 companies that want to create a market to recycle these materials. So I don't know if you have it there, but pet food bags, storage bags, maybe I can go down the list and say I'll leave a couple for you. There'd be much more recyclable material added to your current list of recyclables. Not only would we do the P1 through P7, we do all these plastics. When you buy a case of water, that plastic wrap, that material's now recyclable in our industry, in our company. If you buy food products or plastic wraps, all those items are recyclable. Inside of the cereal box, the plastic, all those items are recyclable. Pampers, plastic wrap. So this would definitely be an added item to your list of recyclable materials. We send out a notice if we were awarded the contract at the beginning of the year with all our information, as well as letting your residents know about this. We actually provide the recycling processing service for your neighbor, Lower Merion. Lower Merion has its own collection department, but they take the recyclables to their facility on Woodbine Lane, and we take it, and we've been bringing it for 3 years to this total recycling facility. I'm probably the only one in Lower Merion that recycles these items because I know about it, but hopefully we'll get Lower Merion to begin to do that in the future as well. So that's it. I think I covered what I wanted to cover. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think right now we'll open it up to public comment, and then we will ask you some questions when we get to,
I didn't talk about your price.
well, I think maybe council, let's hold off on the question and answer until we get to,
Yeah, and just the last thing I want to say is, in my letter I compared we talk about percentages, but if you look at a price of a couple of communities I showed you, you're equal to or less than a couple of other Montgomery County communities. So as much as it's a gulp for you, it's the state of the industry, the market price right now.
all right.
So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. DeGennaro. I'm now going to open it up to general public comment, which can be on any topic that you like, not just what we just heard. A reminder that it will be 3 minutes, and please, if you would like to come up to the mic, you're welcome to. If you think your voice is loud, it'll probably work in the room right now. Please give your name and your address. So let's begin in the front of the room. Public comment?
David Borough, 104 Chestnut Avenue. Question I have for council regarding the proposed earned income tax increase. I'd like to know how the tax policy with the new earned income tax and the tax increase that may be proposed for 2024 works for a business owner in the borough. What is the difference between the business privilege tax and the earned income tax? When I called Berkheimer earlier this year about the earned income tax, I was on hold with several employees, by the way, who were very nice, but for over an hour. Not one could answer my questions about the earned income tax and the quarterly estimated payments.
All right, we will answer questions as usual when we come to the agenda items. So we have a budget presentation, which I think will cover all of that. Public comment? Okay, can you speak up a little?
Because we knew about our trash situation for some time now, so why haven't you initiated to get more proactive in getting bids sooner? Why we only have one bid? That's, deficiency in your capacity here. And then the other thing, there's seven related, I'd like to ask the mayor, do you check our officers for tinnitus?
I'm going to, again, tell the mayor not to answer that question. There are pending threat litigation from the Constantines against the borough.
I've not any
So-
litigation, I have no intent on any litigation.
Well, I've spoken with your attorney related to litigation against the borough.
Okay,
So I'm
there's
going to
a
advise
fact
the
that
mayor.
there's officers that have tinnitus.
Well, there's a fact that you threatened through your attorney litigation against the borough.
No,
I
I
have
did
the
not.
emails. So I'm going
Okay.
to advise the mayor and council not to respond to that question.
Okay. And you still haven't answered how many people have been tased
But again,
who called to report the crime.
Because of the same thing we said before, I counsel to not answer that question.
Thank you. And we'll talk a little about the RFP process after public comment. Public comment, we go to the there. We'll just make a public comment.
Yes. So I have a couple of different comments on.
Name and address for all.
Elmer Scanlon, Savon Avenue. The 11-8 Master Park Plan Committee Chair said emphatically that Savon Park was going to be in the Master Park Plan. She said the existing park and looking at recapturing a portion of the park that was paved over in the 90s, early 2000s. And then Gene Brock at that same meeting, after the Master Park Plan Committee Chair said, yes, Savon is definitely in the Master Park Plan, Gene had said that, well, there's another plan for Savon. And now the committee is totally pivoted on its decision to keep Sabine in the Master Park Plan. So what is this other plan? And you're not telling us, you're not being transparent about us. And then the other big question is, with the budget that's going on, how are we going to afford the plans? Because Ken had said, You know, no matter what you do with the master park plan, we can't afford it anyway. So Sabine is the second oldest park in Narberth. It's very well used, as you all know. By taking Sabine out of the master park plan, you're essentially eliminating Sabine Park. So I want to know why you're eliminating Sabine Park. What's the other plan? I mean, you're giving me a question look, but these are legitimate questions. Because the master park plan has cut one of the parks, the second oldest park in town, out of the master park plan. If there's another plan that's going on, we'd like to know what it is. Not just, well, we'll check on it on the next grant cycle. That's not an answer. We want to know what's happening with that park.
We'll come to that agenda later on.
And then,
You have 1 minute, Calvary?
sorry?
You have 1 minute left on your...
Okay, well, the balanced budget is very, very concerning. And we're talking about the EIT for businesses. That is not a way to grow our town. As our gentleman from Mascaro said, costs are up, costs are up. You're going to crush us by adding an EIT, an extra business EIT tax. Right now, I pay my business privilege tax, I pay my personal EIT tax, and now I'm going to have a business EIT tax. Are you eliminating one or the other?
We'll answer when you're
Yeah,
done.
we'll answer.
I mean,
Are you done
this is
speaking?
really important. And, you know, our businesses are, the businesses in town are our neighbors. They're our friends. Why do we want to crush our businesses by adding more taxes? The cost of everything is up. I mean, our mayor knows, having her own business, how much more things are costing. So if we're going to be taxing us again, we're going to be crushing our town. And why are businesses going to want to come to town? It's very, very short-sighted.
That's
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
The proposal for the budget is to take the current EIT from 0.5% to 0.75%. That is the proposal that's on the table.
And
I'm
it's
not
a
sure.
business, but there's also another addition talking about a business.
We'll come to that on the agenda. There's a business privilege tax which already exists, which we are not proposing to change.
But are you
The
adding,
proposed change is to take the EIT from 0.5 to 0.75. And we'll cover this again when it comes to the budget presentation.
and it's only for the personal, it's not a second business.
It is not, it is what currently exists this year, just taken from 0.5 to 0.75.
Next.
Do you have a public comment, sir?
Yes, Jeremy Fuller, 107 Iona. I'm not sure if you addressed it regarding the trash collection. The RFP, the timeline, just it seems rather sudden that we're getting the announcement, and based on recent communication, it sounds like the information came very recently. My question is, how far along do we start this RFP process? I've been doing some research the last few years. You know, what this gentleman has said, the company is absolutely true. Costs have been going up substantially. So I just, you know, I'm just curious as how far ahead of the game did we get as, you know, as of 2 years ago, municipalities have been receiving very large thank you.
All right. Sir, go ahead.
Richard Rottman, 120 Elmwood Avenue. There was some mention in one of your publications on the internet about an automated trash collection that was rejected, wasn't part of the RFP. Can you talk about that a little bit?
We'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah, once public comment's over. Anything else?
You done?
Okay. Yes. Let's see. There's a note. Anyone else in the room? Go ahead, sir.
Bruce McKittrick, 43 Sabine. I'm a business owner, we live here, and if the borough was running a substantial deficit, which the number I saw looked like 10% of gross revenue was going to be spent on debt service. That is a pretty, as a business owner, that would certainly get my attention. We pay about 1.5% of our gross revenue in debt service. 10% is a 500,000, 540,000 against 5 million. So it's a number. And I was wondering if raising the tax, apart from going from 0.5 to 0.75, is it better to raise the tax to the maximum, pay the debt off, and and then reduce tax, so that we don't have the constant carrying cost. I'm not a municipal finance person at all, but I've been self-employed for almost 45 years, 43 years. So sort of have an eye on how I've been managing my own affairs. And that sort of number really stuck out, 10% of gross revenue for that service. That would scare the heck out of me, for sure.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? We'll talk, again, we have a debt service slide, I think, coming up in the budget presentation.
Good question.
All right.
Are you taking, Fred, this is Deborah Lonsdorf, 128 Chestnut Avenue. Are you taking comments from people watching online?
Yes, I was just about to get to that. So
okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Lonsdorf, and for anybody else, after she's done, please raise your hand or otherwise make yourself known to our Zoom moderator. So go ahead, Ms. Lonsdorf.
Thank you. I wanted to mention, I'd like to hear council talk about the, implementing a landlord licensing, a fee and appropriate follow-up on the taxes on landlord proceeds, which for the most part, I don't believe are being collected now. This is a reasonable and appropriate way for the borough to collect revenue due to them, and it supports 40%, give or take, of the renters that are in Narberth already, because then we would have an opportunity to follow up on any complaints from renters. As currently, we can't do that because we have nothing legally in place. And if anyone has an issue, they have to go through Montgomery County. We don't have representatives from Montgomery County here every day. So, this came up, maybe like 8 years ago, maybe a little less than that, with a family who had no heat, and the landlord would not respond and would not allow them to get a contractor in to look at the house heat. It was a long story, but at the time I went with them to the borough, and there was nothing the borough could do because we have no recourse, and they had to wait like over the weekend until the next week when somebody from representing the county would come in, and it was just a terrible situation. And we're kind of an outlier like that. We can collect revenues from landlords, we can collect the fees, we can collect the taxes, and that's appropriate. It's not onerous, and I just wanted to encourage council to really move forward in that, because I see that you're looking at raising the EIT tax, and I mean, this could probably cover what you're losing there. So, that's pretty much what I wanted to say, Fred, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else online? Okay, I'll look. Sure. Lawrence, go ahead. Do you want to unmute yourself, Lawrence?
Hi there, thank you. Regarding the earned income tax, if I'm not mistaken, you posted a public.
Sorry, you're fading in and out, Lawrence. We can't hear you.
Okay, let me try this again. On Tuesday, I believe you posted publicly the agenda with a proposed 1.0% increase of the earned income tax. And then by Thursday, that had changed to a 0.75 increase. So that made me really curious what is going on, what kind of process is going on. Are you considering both? Did you change your mind? Is there a process? Is there an actual forecasting process going on? Is this sort of a lobster in the pot economics type of situation where you decided that instead of jumping up to 1%, you're going to go to 0.75% this year and 1% next year, and so on to gradually ratchet this up as much as possible? So I'd love to have a direct answer to what happened between Tuesday and Thursday. And obviously you were considering 1%. Why are you only considering 0.75 now? Regarding the trash contract, I would strongly encourage you to reject the contract and not to award a 3-year contract. It's absolutely unacceptable to have a single bid All due respect to the contractor, maybe this is a fair price, maybe it's an unfair price. It doesn't matter. You only got one bid. So due diligence has not been done. I don't know why you would wait until the end of the year to do this. You've still got 6 weeks more. I don't know what your bidding rules are and what you're allowed or not allowed to do, whether you can make phone calls around to try to get additional bids. But it's absolutely unacceptable that you would say to the borough, well, we got one bid and we're going to take it and we're going to lock you in for 3 years. And by the way, folks, that's the doubling, the 100% increase is just for year one. It looks like in your contract, it goes up slightly every year after that. So I would strongly encourage you to do your due diligence and at least get another quote. If you get multiple quotes and that's the best you can do, that is the whole different story. Regarding Sabine Avenue, I'd like to ask a direct question.
Your time is up, I'm afraid, Lawrence. Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Amy Smith, 127 Marion Avenue. I wanted to make 3 points for the council's consideration. One, it's concerning to the borough start the year in a deficit, and we would like to understand how this financial situation came to be. We believe it will have detrimental effects on essential community spaces and amenities such as the Narberth Library. Also, if there are planned tax increases, this needs to be shared and explained to residents to allow for community feedback and input on how this new revenue will be utilized. If we want to improve the EV charging station program by working with the borough to relocate the EV charging station at 125, 127 Marion Avenue to a more appropriate location that can better serve the needs of the community. As pertains to the budget, this location did not receive the PA DEP Driving PA Forward grant, and the majority of the infrastructure for this charger is funded by the borough. Third, given the state of the borough's finances and debt load, any major projects for 201 Sabine needs to be tabled until the proper considerations are made in terms of the costs and Narberth's ability to meet these expenses. And as Sabine Park is one of the oldest parks in Narberth, the financially responsible step would be to include it as part of the master park plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else online who wishes to make a comment? All right, I see none. I'm going to close public comment at this time. I'm going to speak a little bit about the trash RFP process. So RFPs are typically written by professional staff with oversight from council. You know, we don't have deep expertise on trash administration or on many of the details of the running of the borough. That's why we hire these fine folks over here. And in fact, our last trash RFP 4 years ago was primarily written by our current interim manager, Matt West, who at the time was assistant manager of the borough. So this year's trash RFP was first delayed due to the unexpected departure of Samantha Bryant. The office was short-staffed once she left, and at that time we prioritized projects that needed to be completed immediately and essential borough functioning. With the arrival of a new manager in July, the office was fully staffed and the new manager started to put together the RFP. From that point, there were several delays in getting the RFP ready for council to review, and it had to be removed from council agendas multiple times. When council did receive the RFP for final consideration, it did not contain a lot of information that was included in the 2019 RFP. It included some wrong data about the number and location of borough trash bins. There's no description of our junk week. There's incorrect recycling information. And it didn't have some very important clauses about the borough's right to penalize the trash hauler if trash collections were missed. As a result, and when we were looking this over, council made the decision to correct the RFP before it went out to bid. A little bit more of a delay there. So as a result, the RFP went out to bid later than we would have liked. And I think, when it came time to open the bids, that is the point where our current trash hauler, Republic, told us that they were not going to make another bid, that they had decided that they were only going to focus on automated pickup, on places where they could do automated pickup, and as a result, they were not going to be contracting with Narberth any further. And at that time, the office looked into other options, and I'll let Mr. West or Mr. Gazzardo talk a little about that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, so it was a unique experience, and certainly the bid process was started prior to my tenure here, and the bid had been advertised prior to my start, and so we were expecting the bid to be opened on the specific day, over 2 weeks ago. That was the day that the current trash hauler showed up and handed us in writing a letter saying that they're getting out of the rear load business, and the result would be one trash bid. And so in the time since the bid opening to all the way to yesterday, trying to explore alternative options, including trying to get some time for another year, maybe extend the current contract a year to explore other options, looking at intermunicipal agreements with surrounding municipalities, to no avail. And those things take time. We need at least a year to work out all of those scenarios. And unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of time. And the result is, we have a valid bid. And so, what's the alternative? And so, we have a bid by a reputable company to provide the services. And I think Mr. DeGennaro has explained it well, that costs are, post-COVID, costs are going up. And my numbers are a little different, a little better. I have a 92% increase versus 111, so not that it matters, right? It's a significant increase, and that detail is not lost on me. And I just wanted to reiterate that, staff has been so busy these past couple of weeks trying to explore alternatives to buy us time to reevaluate. And unfortunately, we don't have that luxury of time.
Can I ask a clarifying question which pivots to Jeremy's question actually for you? Even if we had time, right, if we had the year to the 6 months, it appears that major waste management companies are moving to this automated system, which we have been told Narberth Streets will not and will not ever probably be able to adapt to this technology given the narrow, composition of our streets and parking. So even if we had the time, would we have gotten more than one bid? Because I see your company does the majority of small boroughs and municipalities in this area.
That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. The idea that national companies, Waste Management, Republic, they're national companies. And it was explained to me by our representative from our current trash hauler, Republic, that it's a corporate decision from central office nationwide that they are no longer moving forward with any new contracts for rear load. Logistically, we cannot have automated trash in this borough. It just wouldn't work. You would have, think about this. Everybody would have to push their carts out into the street for that to happen. Imagine that, right? They're tight streets to begin with, and it would be unsightly. There'd be trash bins getting hit, you name it, right? And so it wouldn't work. And, I even tried negotiating for a 3-month, 6-month. To your point, I am not confident that we would get any better result than the current bid.
And there was the question about what is actually automated from the public.
And what is, so, I had automated trash service in San Antonio before I moved out here. They just instituted it. I mean, it's got a grabber claw. It goes and it picks up the dumpster and throws it in. It's considered safer than having somebody running in and out of the truck to pick up the trash bins. It's a dangerous job. So I understand why they're doing it, but
Can we let Mr. DeGennaro talk about the future of?
Yeah, I was just saying you're correct, and honestly, from our perspective, we look at it as the automated service benefits the contractor, not the resident, because you're confined to what you can put in that container. It's all about their cost. They don't want someone anywhere near the back of the truck. They don't want someone to get out of the truck. So when you have a bulk, that presents a problem. They want the cookie cutter where the truck goes down the street and the guy or gal driving the truck never gets out. And that's all well and good if you're trying to control your labor costs and perhaps your workers' compensation claims. But in terms of service for your residents, people put stuff outside the container that wouldn't get picked up, and you have bulk, and you have mattresses, all kinds of problems. And that's the way they're going. They're focusing on that as well as looking at other issues. But you know, there's a reason why we service all these boroughs. First of all, you know, we have the smaller trucks. We have the larger trucks, but we'll often have a pup truck that will go in and out because you're not unlike Ambler, Bridgeport, Rockledge, where that doesn't work. Your overhead wires, your curbs, your streetscapes. So it's not really, I heard a gentleman mention that, it's really not cost effective for this community. I lived out in Whitpain, everyone's got 2-acre lots, and it's a cul-de-sac. That's fine out there, but this is as close to city or inner suburban as you can get. It wouldn't work here. And some of the prices I gave you were even automated. There were a couple of automated contracts in there. And it wouldn't do anything for you.
Andrew?
It's just as a finer point, there's also liability issues with that the automated systems avoid. So some contractors want to avoid the workers' comp and the liability of having people behind the truck.
Right. You know, and plus, it's not unusual. We like to think we have the kind of workforce that there could be senior citizens that won't roll the thing all the way down or need help bringing it, and you got 2 people in the back of the truck or walking beside the truck. They can do that. I live on Brayburn. I run through your town, and I see what the person does in the back of the truck along with the driver. So I mean, it's a type of service that you don't get when you have it automated, just lifting the arm and never getting out of the truck.
And Matt, I'm sorry, just one more question to clarify. I know that you did look at, you know, you could piecemeal this, but then that would mean we would have essentially trash trucks in the borough all the time if we went, you know, 1 yard waste, 1 recycling, 1 trash, and that is something that clearly
I would not recommend that.
Residents would want that.
Both, you know, certainly from a resident standpoint and from an administrative standpoint, to manage 3 different trash haulers doing different things on different days would just not be cost effective either.
Thanks.
All right, so this is a regular agenda item, so we will return to this discussion briefly. Yeah, go ahead.
I had a question for Mr. DeGennaro.
Yes.
Okay. Can you say more about the landfill? You said that it has a high rating with the DEP. Is some of the solid waste diverted to incinerators? Where is it all going to?
No, the Pioneer Crossing landfill that we identified in our bid is a Mascaro related entity. It's owned by the Mascaro family, and it's a smaller regional site that primarily takes almost no out-of-state trash. And if you check with the DEP, it's a small site compared to some of the mega sites. Waste Management has grows. It has like 6,000 tons a day. This landfill takes on average 12 to 1,500 tons a day. It's a solid waste landfill permitted by the DEP. We just got a new 10-year permit in August of 2023 that's good for another 10 years. So the facility's there for the long term. There's no incineration. As I mentioned in my letter, there's a couple of communities, White Marsh being one of them, that opted to get away from the Plymouth incinerator and send trash to a landfill. So your solid waste would go through our transfer station in Great Valley, which is in Bridgeport, and then be transported to the landfill in Berks County. And when the time comes, we'd be happy to provide a tour for that, as well as the recycling center.
Okay, is your company exploring methane capture at the landfill?
Yes, there's about a $6 or $7 million facility on site that captures the methane gas and sells it to the grid. So that's all recycling as well.
Okay, great.
Can I ask Matt a question, maybe John? It's my understanding that if we rejected the bid, our only alternative would be basically to put out a new RFP. Because having one bid, you have to either accept the bid or rebid it. How long would that process take? And I assume that means that during that time period, nobody's getting their trash picked up, right? So would we be going at least a month or 2 months?
It's hard to say. That's a good question. And so if we would, if you have the option to reject, we can do that. Therefore, we would not have a valid trash bidder for January 1. You need to rebid. We could, do it a streamlined bid in a week. It's really, a week. You're not giving haulers enough time to digest and respond with a quality bid. You really like to have at least 2 to 3 weeks when it goes out. We don't have the luxury of that time, because what the other detail that we're missing is that we're now in November, and it will take us probably about, my experience, at least a month to coordinate with the new hauler to talk about logistics, how you take over the borough. So there's that lag time also. So you've got the contract issue, trying to settle on a contract, but then you've got the logistical issue of onboarding a new trash hauler.
What's the tax? The fee. We have to set the fee within.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, don't we legally
This
have
is
to
part
set
of the
fee
operating
by-
budget
Right. So
that needs to be passed by December 31st.
So
And I hate to give the plant their idea in their head, but if they all know that we have no reason to believe we'd get new bids because we solicited all over the place and only got one to begin with. These guys know that there's a possibility that they're going to be the only bidder again. They could jack up the price another couple $100,000 on us, and we'd be more stuck than we are now. Okay.
Or if you change the bid, they could decide not to bid.
Oh, yeah, and then, no trouble.
And then,
All right.
can I ask, Mr. DeGennaro, based on your experience, is this an unusual time for municipalities to be putting out RFPs or accepting RFPs?
It starts after Labor Day, and I'm going to meetings next week, the following week. This is the bidding period. When you talked about your delay, that was your own internal delay. But if you look between now and the end of the year, there are meetings into December where municipalities are deciding to award a bid. It's all in the last 90 days, so you're really not, you may have been behind the 8 ball for your own internal staff. In terms of putting out the bid, this is not late. You're right in the middle of the game. And I have to be honest with you, one of the things that doesn't sit well with us is when we step forward, put a bid in, and then you're going to consider throwing it out. You got one bid. You may not get any bids the next time.
Mr. DeGennaro, is your, I don't know if you give us the honest answer, but is your bid, had it been earlier, would it have been lower, or would your bid going to be what your bid was?
No, we project our cost out 12 to 18 to 24 months. So when I show you these numbers and you look at that chart, the last 12 months have been where they are. I mean, fuel's changed a little bit, but I mean, would the bid have been cheaper if it was out a month or two earlier? No, it's a 3-year bid. So we're projecting what it's going to be in January of 2024, January of 2025, and January of 2026. And those are costs that we have accountants, tax people more sophisticated with numbers than I am, but you haven't been prejudiced at all because you're talking about this. I was somewhere Monday night. Where was I Monday night? Nazareth Borough. I'll be someplace next week. I mean, this is the time, and everyone's doing it because this is your budget session. So I go to some meetings, I scratch my head, it's like the 3rd week of December, they're talking about it. So it's, the price is the price, and nothing's going down. You might think you find a short-term fix, but I've gone to communities and they think it's self-service. When I tell these folks, award a 5-year contract if you have a 3 and a 5-year option, and they roll the dice and go with 3 years. Well, those communities 3 years ago that went with a 5-year bid and they're still involved are much happier than the communities that had a 3-year bid and now they're rebidding it. So it's nothing's going to change. It's been a reset in our industry, and you're not prejudiced at all by this time. You respectfully, you keep saying RFP, and in my industry, RFP is request for proposals where you negotiate. This is under the this is under the Borough Code. This is a bid. No matter what you call it, it's a public bid where you have to award it to the lowest responsible bidder. And I can't change my price, and I can't change the specs, and you can't change anything. That's the way the Borough Code provides, with the idea to make sure that you advertise, everybody's treated fairly. There's no negotiations or no behind the scenes. Our number's our number, and that's what it is.
2 matters for council's clarification. This is actually a 4-year bid, it's not a 3-year bid to be in 7. And that's what's on the agenda, and that's what was bid upon. The other, just to make sure it's clear, there was nothing in the RFP or that required it to be manpower instead of automation. That this was the same, 99%, the same that it was from the previous bid. So there wasn't any restriction that in the bid itself or the RFP itself that got rid of those automated or haulers. That was just the choice of the haulers, not anything that the borough did in the bid to
What day was the bid submitted?
Mascaro's bid?
Yes.
When was it submitted?
November 2nd, when the bid closed, before the bid closed on November 2nd.
His letter is dated after that, November.
So I had it before the bid opening, I can attest to that, and
His letter was sent after.
Yeah,
Yeah, the letter was
this
sent
letter was sent to
Yeah.
Borough Council.
Yeah.
This is after the bids
Wasn't a part of
were
it.
released.
Yeah.
Said it was hand delivered. It was hand delivered on the second, but the letter was hand delivered after that.
The letter about the other municipalities and why the costs have gone up, that was after the bid.
It's in the package.
Yes.
Yeah, that was an information item, that's not the bid itself, that's information for council to
I'm
consider.
saying that.
Yeah.
Show me proof that the bid was received on the second. Is there a postcard?
Talk about the sealed bid process briefly, then we'll move on.
We had a public opening, a bid opening here on November 2nd at 2 p.m.
Okay, and I should the cameras roll back if someone walked in here with a bid. Can you do that?
For cameras.
I'm sorry, we don't have security cameras inside the borough, but it's it's a process
At the
defined
door.
by law.
At the door, there's a camera.
Yeah, this has gone beyond
How many trucks do you?
clarifications.
Thank you.
We're going to move to the agenda. This is not really a time for a back and forth conversation, and I have the fullest faith that our bid opening was handled as accordance to the law, as there are many bids that are handled by the office, all in the same manner.
Can I just ask one quick question, if I may?
Go ahead, Jean.
This is for Mr. Gennaro regarding the recycling contract. Is that single stream or is it separated?
What's the question?
Single stream or
recycling
separated?
or separate?
I'm sorry?
Single stream or separated?
Oh, it's single stream, everything together. Papers, tin, aluminum, plastic, all in one container.
That reminds me of a follow-up question of something that I saw. Well, no, someone was wondering, would the cost go down if we cut out some of the items that we recycle, that we throw in there? And my guess is the answer is no, but somebody was thinking back to the days when paper was collected separately, and then just glass and metal was collected. And when we went to single stream, part of the reason for that was to cut down the number of trucks coming through the borough all the time. It was cheaper. I was guessing it probably didn't make sense to go back the other way, that would just increase costs.
Yeah, well, in reality, the idea with single stream was to encourage more people, because instead of having one side for paper and something else for everything, you mix it all together. So actually, the numbers have gone up typically when a community converted from the dual stream to the single stream, because people recycle more. They just throw everything all together. You don't worry about separating it.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I move to approve the consent agenda items for approval, A and B?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We are now voting on the consent agenda items. All those in favor of passing consent agenda items A and B? Opposed? Okay. All right. Next item of business is budget presentation. Mr. West.
And Matt, just to highlight two themes that came up with questions, is if you could explain the difference between an EIT versus a business privilege tax, and then addressing the question of the 10% deficit with debt service.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And if it gets lost somewhere in my presentation, my long-windedness, please feel free to nudge me. I have, it's about 503 slides tonight. I'm kidding, it's 502. No, I've streamlined it from my draft budget presentation from last week. You're going to see many of the similar themes. Not much has changed between the draft budget and the preliminary budget, except for the EIT. And I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. And so when we talk about the budget, capital T, capital B, in Pennsylvania we are required, council is required, every municipality is required to pass a balanced operating budget by December 31st of that year. And so for Narberth, our operating budgets are three: general fund, sewer fund, and solid waste fund. All of those equal our operating funds. We do have other funds, capital F, but they're not operating funds. Examples are the capital fund, highway aid fund, and police pension fund. Those three things, highway aid and police pension, are their own funds, self-operated. We get money from the state through highway aid that's highly regulated, that we can only use that money on very specific things. Police pension is based upon contributions to existing police officers and payments out to existing retirees. Those are not required to be passed by council. I know the past couple of years you've seen that as part of your annual budget presentation. Unfortunately, given the circumstance, I have been focusing on merely the operating funds. I'm still hopeful that I will be able to show you the 2024 budgets for the remaining funds as part of the final budget, but that falls outside of the requirements of adopting this preliminary budget.
I do want to add that council expects to fully fund the police pension as usual.
Yes, yes. So great, thank you. Yep. And so you're going to see what I've done is I've organized this presentation with the different color codes. Yeah, I had some fun with the green for sewer and kind of tried to get brown for solid waste. Tried to make it a little light tonight because I know everybody loves hearing me ramble on about budget. So you're going to see those tabs as I work through the presentation, just so everybody can follow along about which operating fund I'm talking about. This is one of my favorite annual slides, just to show the breakdown of your municipal tax bill. Oftentimes in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of angst with taxpayers, me included. I pay X amount of dollars, I can't believe this. Most of it, the lion's share, goes to your school district, and that is across all Pennsylvania. We get, from your total municipal tax bill, Narberth only gets 21% of that. That's a significantly small section of your total municipal tax bill, real estate tax bill. Moving into our general fund, these are the tax rates that this presentation assumes. And so what I did was show the 2023 rate, these are the rates that we have currently, compared with the 2024 proposed rate. So you can see I am proposing as part of this preliminary budget, no change to real estate taxes, no change to the homestead exemption, no change to the business privilege tax. Here's the answer for number one, business privilege tax. Business privilege tax is set by ordinance. It's $1.50 per $1,000 of gross volume of business. That's pretty, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Walker, but that's set by law and we can't change that. There's no way that we can actually change that. There's no enacting a new business tax, business privilege tax, and we cannot change this level.
Correct. After, I believe, 1989, the law changed to say that if you amend it, you risk losing it. And no longer after that time could a municipality have a business privilege tax. So the only municipalities that have them are those that enacted them prior to that time.
And that tax, thank you, and that tax for Narberth Borough is administered through a tax collection agency called eCollect Plus. We do not get regular updates for that, and that is their own specialty on identifying businesses and processing business privilege tax for the borough, and through which they then pay the borough the revenue. No, that is not eamed income tax. That is earned. Unfortunately, my text looks like it's eamed, but there is an R and an N there. Earned income tax. Let's talk about that tonight. So for 2023, there's been a lot of questions about earned income tax for public comment. We are currently at 0.50% in earned income tax. The preliminary budget proposes an increase to 0.75. I believe there was a question about why did it change. The original agenda had 1. Now if you're following along at home, we actually took it off of the agenda and then it came back on at 0.75. The answer is that Tuesday afternoon, the borough received the projections from Berkheimer, which is the borough's EIT tax collector, with projections for the remainder of 2023 and 2024. which significantly increased the projections that we were anticipating for 2024. It almost doubled. So this preliminary budget enabled us to bring down earned income tax a bit and get it well within striking range. So for 2024, the preliminary budget, this is the major difference between the draft budget and the preliminary budget. A significantly higher number for earned income tax based on 0.75%. Their projections to us were even significantly higher for 0.5%, which enabled us to plug that number in, and we were still at a deficit, even just keeping it at 0.50%. So that 0.75% gets us up to a closer level, and you'll see in a minute, we're still gonna be running at a deficit, but in a deficit that I am comfortable using general fund reserves to cover, and I'll explain that in a bit, because typically I'm not a fan of using general fund reserves to plug budget holes. Any questions about the tax rates?
You can put a pin in this for later if you want to, but I want to ask it now because I think it connects with your question too. In looking at the data from surrounding Montgomery and Bucks County, it appears that there's 112 municipalities within EIT. 2 have 0.5, we're 1, the other is in Bucks. Everyone else appears to be at 1%. Is there a reason why we don't just do 1% like the other 111?
Well, I can't answer that. I don't know what the reason is. There's a reason not to. There's no reason not to, I guess. Typically, in my experience with earned income tax, when earned income tax became available, every municipality that wanted to do it said, yep, 1%, max out, 1%, be done with it. I think it was 1 or 2 years after EIT was established is when school districts were allowed to come in and take half of it. Narberth, and so while if you look at that same spreadsheet, it says, well, the municipality only gets 0.5%, but that still residents have 1%. Half of the other 0.5% goes to the school district. Narberth is unique in that Lower Merion School District does not collect an earned income tax. And so if you would bump it up to 1%, the borough would receive the full 1%.
Could the school district later on claim that?
I don't know the answer to that. I believe I'm not certain that school districts are allowed to go back after that anymore, but I could be wrong.
So, and to clarify, so I pay 3.98 to fill, so this doesn't affect me, I'll give that disclaimer. But so, you know, I work in North Wales, let's say, and I pay 1%. Right now, 0.5 of that comes to Narberth, 0.5 stays in North Wales.
Yes.
Or whatever example I just used. If we switch it to 1%, my paycheck doesn't change, it's just that 1% goes from North Wales to shifted. Okay.
Your home municipality gets all of that 1%, but because we've only had 0.5%, if you work in a municipality that has 1%, you're still paying that 1%, and it gets split.
We're just getting half of it. Okay,
Yes.
and then I'll just ask if you could connect my question to, is there a reason why, should we consider going up to 1% kind of connection to that gentleman's question with debt services? Later.
I would smile if you did that, because that would give us more cushion, because if you remember, well, you'll see it later, the preliminary budget does not include any transfer to the capital fund. The capital fund is a child of the general fund. The capital fund, you do not have any dedicated millage that feeds the capital fund. So the capital fund is always dependent upon general fund. This budget is as lean as I can get it. It does not include any transfer to the capital fund. So, to your point, if you do go up to 1%, I estimate that it would mean we would end up with a budget surplus projected about 225 to 250 for 2024. That can then be put. You can shift that to the capital fund. You could then fund your capital fund, which is supporting this debt service. And I'll talk about the debt service a little bit too, because it's a little bloated. It's a little misleading. And I'll talk about that when I get to the debt service slide.
Thank you. Before we go off of that, I already asked a question about the EIT, suggesting that it came out of the business, but my at least the way I paid it, it's the employee who's getting taxed, not the business.
That's my understanding.
It's just completely.
If you look at the wording on
It's
10B, it says, the way it's worded, that's what makes me think. It says, approval to advertise ordinance on.
Yeah, so that's the legal wording.
On
I mean,
all profits earned by businesses, professionals and other activities conducted by residents of Harvard Borough. So that sounds like
but it's not.
that's on businesses.
Now I understand why you thought that, but it's actually taxed on the employee, not on the business.
So then
the business has to collect
we'll let Mr. Walker.
So to be clear, the only practical change that this makes, there is currently an ordinance about this tax. And the only thing that changes in this ordinance is that number that currently says 0.5 and the date that it would take effect. All the rest of the text is the same. So there is no other addition or change in the current ordinance, and therefore the current tax, except for the rate.
And so it is just personal, it's not in addition to business.
No,
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
I want to give another example that Cindy just gave. I'm in a slightly different situation. I work mostly in my office in Philadelphia, but occasionally work in Narberth. On the days that I work in Narberth, again, that money ends up getting attributed to Narberth, and Narberth gets the money, 1%. On the days I work in Philly, I'm paying 3.9%. So, in fact, for somebody like me who's working hybrid home and downtown, it doesn't affect, raising it to 1% actually won't affect me at all, because I'm not paying, I would be paying that extra money to Philadelphia anyway. So if any of you are partially working in Philadelphia, all you're doing is transferring money that would otherwise go to Philadelphia to Narberth. As I said, I'll do my civic duty work at home twice a week instead of once a week. Since I'm affected.
So when it hits the threshold of 1%.
I'm sorry, Carol Marie.
Half that goes to the school?
All right, so there are some municipalities which have a 1% EIT, of which 0.5% goes to the municipality and 0.5% goes to the school district. Narberth is not one of them. Lower Merion School District does not collect an EIT, and we do not believe that they have the ability to collect an EIT at this point.
1% is the most it can be. Ever. And the question is, does that 1% have to be split with the school district? And most school districts, it has to be split. So there's a lot of municipalities out there where 0.5% goes to the municipality and half goes to the school district. Lower Merion does not have it, so there's nothing that precludes the entire 1% from going to Narberth Borough. But again, if you were working in Philadelphia, all of it would go to Philadelphia. If you were working in another municipality that had 1% to their school district and 1% to their municipality, it would go to that other school district and that other municipality instead of coming to Narberth Borough.
All right, okay. Plug along. All right. Any other questions about tax rates? Seeing none, moving on. So here is a breakdown of our projected major revenue sources for 2024. And again, this assumes a 0.75% EIT. Nothing else has changed from draft budget to preliminary budget. And so I ranked our revenue sources based upon the total percentage of our total expected revenue. And we still get 53% of the borough's budgeted revenue from real estate taxes. And this number also includes the homestead exemption. So while the total number of the universe of parcels and taxable amounts, that's been reduced by about $185,000 down to just over $2.9 million for 2024. So the earned income tax, you're going to see a major jump from the draft budget because we had $475,000 in the draft budget. This number reflects a jump to 0.75% and includes increased projections from Berkheimer which anticipates $700,000 to $750,000 for 2024 at the 0.5%. So I took that number, added 0.25 percentage points to it. I subtracted a month because we're going to have a month lag time before it gets enacted. The earned income tax requires a 30-day period from when you enact the ordinance to when it gets turned on. And so
it would be 0.5% in January and then whatever.
It would be 0.5% in January, and then starting February 1, I'm projecting 0.75. So that's what that number reflects. No other changes to revenue sources between the draft and preliminary budgets.
All right, one quick question here. We had a suggestion that looking at landlords would significantly up the business privilege tax. Do you think that that would have a major impact on the budget if we were to regulate landlords more?
I would say it would have an impact. I don't know if it's major or minor. I don't know the universe.
I think it really depends on how many landlords are not paying their taxes right now. And it would be establishing a system of registering rental properties that can then be enforced. And then once that registry of those rental properties is required, they'd be able to be tracked to make sure also that they are paying the taxes that they should be paying.
So given that the BPT is 170,000 right now,
I'm not in a position to opine on what that would do. There would be an added administrative cost, which we are not in the position. The administration is not in a position to take another exercise on. Maybe once we get some stability in the office and we get fully staffed, this is something that we can keep our eyes on for 2025. Started talking about it at the end of 2024, with maybe talking about the 2025 budget. That would be my recommendation. Okay. More revenue summary, real estate taxes. This slide just shows the difference between 2023 and the change between 2023 and 2024. Again, we're seeing a reduction in the real estate taxes due to the homestead exemption. The 2023 budget unfortunately didn't have the homestead exemption accounted for. The earned income tax, that's our major jump. Increase in 2024 projections and a 0.75 for most of 2024. I also recommended a bump down in real estate transfer tax, just given that the real estate market might be cooling, just to be a little more conservative with our estimates on that. Yeah, all right.
You know, or can you estimate what the 2023 actual will be for EIT?
For EIT?
Yeah.
I got a projection from Berkheimer, and they projected being between 500 and 525,000 for 2023. We had it in the budget for 475, so it's going to be more than what we budgeted for.
But it's not like a huge.
It's not a huge number, and they also said since the EIT is new to Narberth, right, it's difficult for them to give really solid projections because they don't have the long-term data, and it's only based upon 2 quarters worth of data that they have. So they said, this is our conservative estimate of what it's going to be.
Somebody emailed us today, and I didn't understand this. So people who get a bi-weekly paycheck, it's coming out of their paycheck area of the week, but people who are non-W-2 employees, how do they remit their EIT? Is that just quarterly, or do they just do that at the end of the year?
It's quarterly.
Quarterly?
Each resident has to do it on their own.
Okay.
Every business owner, sole proprietor.
So they should know, people who've already paid, they would have paid 2 quarters, right? So their projections, the person was suggesting that we couldn't really accurately project the EIT for people who were 1099 folks, but we have 2 quarters worth of data on that.
And Berkheimer has been in this business for quite a long time, and they are the tax collector for EIT for the entire county.
Right.
To wax poetic here a little bit, Berkheimer all municipalities in Montgomery County have joined together the tax collection committee. They, as a committee, hire a tax collector for EIT and LST. That is Berkheimer from Montgomery County. They serve all municipalities for EIT and LST, all municipalities in Montgomery County. Their projections, I trust their projections. I think they tend to be conservative in their projections also. In my experience, they tend to bump those numbers down. So I used the higher end. For the budget, I used $740,000 expected. Let's say for 0.5%, $10,000 less than the 750 of the upper range.
Matt, I have some questions. For the EIT, do we have numbers on percentage of residents who are now paying the EIT to Margaret, or number of residents that are paying the EIT, either or? So we have a sense of, and how many of those paying EIT are new to the EIT, meaning that they weren't paying it to another municipality?
So the easy answer is no.
You don't?
So EIT, the reason that we go through Berkheimer is that it's an insulator. The borough does not want people's income data. We don't want that information. We don't want it in the office. We don't know. So I'm not sure that Berkheimer actually collects that data, or are they able to give that data to the municipality. That type of data, you'll want some separation between people's personal income versus tax. And so that's the role of Berkheimer, in being that third party intermediary. I'm not sure if they have that data collected. I'm sure they have the data. I'm not sure what the availability is for them to share it with municipalities, or if that's possible.
It would be good, I think, helpful to know, like, the burden of the tax, of paying the additional taxes. Is it falling on a broad base, or is it falling on the shoulders of, fewer people? And I think, in fairness, taxes for municipalities, should be shared amongst more. Many hands make short work.
That's a really good point. And I think that is something that we can ask Berkheimer to provide. Maybe I'll ask them what types of reports are available. Maybe I can get something for the final budget.
So anybody paying, the EIT to Philadelphia is exclusive, because Philadelphia is one of those towns where you pay it to them and they get it, we don't get it. So anybody paying taxes EIT to Philadelphia is not impacted by this increase, because they're outside that scope.
Samantha and I tried to get these data, Andrew, that may help you. And the reason why we were going to dig down and ask Berkheimer this, but we then also had to ask the city of Philadelphia, which we surmised a substantial amount of, that's what Samantha did. Yeah, correct.
Have fun with that.
And then we tried to even call to identify the person who in Philadelphia who would answer the phone, and we thought this is not a good use of our time. So we're not really ever going to have a clear picture of how many residents are paying that 3.98.
Right. I don't think it's right to look at this in a vacuum and just say how many people are paying the new Narberth EIT, when so many residents are paying an EIT somewhere, and a lot of them in Philadelphia. But I just think if we had this number, people are going to think in a vacuum without the full picture.
I actually think it's very relevant, because I think the burden is falling on the people paying EIT.
But those other people are paying an EIT already.
That's right, but us raising or lowering it doesn't affect them. So it doesn't affect Narberth, it doesn't help Narberth, it doesn't affect Narberth.
No.
This is just
but it does, because you're going to get 0.75% of the days that I work in Narberth.
You're an unusual circumstance. Most people either work in Philly or out.
No, do you know how many people, I disagree with that, Mayor. There are plenty of people who I ride the train with every day who are working hard days at home, hard days in the city. And all of those, wait, let me finish, please. All of those people, we would directly benefit from raising the EIT without costing any of those people a dime. The only people who are going to have to pay a tax who wouldn't otherwise pay that tax are people such as yourself who work exclusively in Narberth and
or Lower Merion, or New Jersey. Yeah, no, it's not just.
Well, people who don't otherwise have.
So I'm saying an increase in EIT is falling on the shoulders of a smaller percentage of other ways of taxing.
Or you could look at it as you actually have had a grace period and that everyone else has paid an
No, I mean, like there's other, no, Lower Merion doesn't pay. I mean, it's not a given. It's not a given.
Well,
I mean, if we looked at the property tax, there are about 1,480 properties in the borough. Some of those have multiple owners, some of those are exempt. Let's say there's about 1,300 property owners that are paying the property tax. I mean, I think it's going to be comparable, number of people who are paying the EIT.
Do you?
Who are newly paying the EIT. I mean,
I don't know that it's comparable.
I mean, it's not going to be.
It feels like property tax.
It's not going to be 500 people paying the EIT. It's going to be close.
My concern, and I think I've expressed this a number of times, is I'm looking to spread the burden over as wide a plateau as possible.
And we.
Please let me finish. My concern is, to those making higher incomes, yes, you're paying more. You're paying more, and it feels, why am I paying? Well, that's the way it goes because you have more income. This cuts off at 12%, at $12,000. If you make less than $12,000, you don't have to pay. You make $12,050, you have to pay. If you have people making minimum wage, and say we have some people working in our restaurants or retail workers who often make minimum wage.
And live
rent, maybe they live with parents, maybe, yeah.
Or people like my son who just works in the summer.
If I can please finish.
No, I'm giving you another example.
My concern is, to people who have higher incomes, paying a little more is a grumble, yeah, I'm a little annoyed. To somebody who's only making $12,050, an extra $100 is a lot. You don't have the fat to skim off of. And so I understand that there's some thoughts that you just don't have the fat to spare. That $1,200, that extra $100 is going to come out of groceries. That sits on, if you may. If that is a concern that in ways, it's called a progressive tax. I think there are ways in which it's oppressive, not necessarily progressive. And so I think the fairness would be to spread it out over property taxes, which, in theory, your property taxes are based on what? Assessed value? Assessed value. And we all know the assessed values are nowhere near the actual values. The actual values are substantially higher. So you probably have a lot more equity in your home. You probably have a little more, more equity in your home. And people who aren't working often have passive income. They have investments, they have Social Security, they have pensions, they have things that aren't subject to this tax. I think raising the property taxes slightly and maybe getting rid of the homestead exemption, which frankly is a nightmare for the office. Getting rid of that, it's an administrative nightmare. Getting rid of that, that's a little bump. And then doing a slight property tax raise rises the tide a little more evenly. For that reason, I think that should be looked at closer than raising. And in fact, our EIT, by the way, now that Matt's explained it, now that we're one of the few municipalities that's not sharing it with the school board, we are getting 50% is pretty much what most municipalities get. And now we're going above that level.
Can I ask a question?
Just a quick clarification. So this goes back to our comprehensive plan where the community said one of our goals was aging in place. What you're talking about is equality versus equity. And what council has said repeatedly is that we were taking an equitable approach, right? Meaning that, again, someone making $12,000, we said, could we up that? You can, right?
That's what I was going to ask.
You cannot.
You're not allowed to.
We looked into it. It's a state thing.
Okay.
This is an equitable approach, right? I understand for you personally, I hear you navigating because this is a new tax for you.
Yeah.
But we're suggesting we're actually not raising the tax on several, we're not going to get those data, on several folks, we're going to divert it from what they're already paying back to Norwich. Hold on, let me tell you. For some folks, like yourself, who live in Narberth and work in Narberth, or live in Narberth and work in Lower Merion, yes, it will be a small tax. And you have gotten a grace period of not having that. For me, I'm sad. I wish I could give a little percentage of my 3.98 to Narberth, but I can't. This is an equitable approach, and that comes from our comprehensive plan that was community crafted, not by this council. And it's a philosophy, a budget philosophy, that again, our community crafted in that 2016 comprehensive plan.
And I just want to be clear, I don't want the implication out there that I'm saying this because it affects me. Frankly, my earned income, I don't make a lot from the store. Most of my income is passive. And so I would be hit harder on a property tax than this. So this is not about me personally. I would pay less if we stick with this. But I'm thinking equity.
You're thinking equality.
Equality.
I'm thinking equity.
Yes, equality. I'm sorry, I'm misusing the word. I'm thinking spreading the burden and raising all tides a little bit for everyone. And I just feels more equitable.
I remind council that at this time last year, council actually voted down imposing the local services tax.
Correct.
For those same reasons that would impact everyone, those who make it.
Correct. Yeah.
On that same basis.
Because of the 12,000.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Thanks, John.
I wanted to say my piece. I wanted to put it out there. I think these are thoughts, that are valid, and I would be remiss if I didn't say my piece and put it out there.
If I may, so the one, I understand what you're saying, and I know that the homestead exemption is a bit of a burden, but it does encourage owner-occupied.
It's $200. I don't know. It's anybody's making a major decision on that.
$200 to your point.
It's $200, but it's also a little bit of an administrative nightmare for the office.
Is it?
I don't know, maybe not a nightmare. It is an administrative burden. It is extra steps that we have to do on an annual basis. Council will actually have to adopt it every year, and then we have to go, and there's a county interaction. So it is additional work.
It probably was worse last year because it was the initiation the first time that we had it. After that time, there's still not as much as the first time.
It's just another process to keep track of.
But I just think it sends a message that we support owner-occupied.
And Ira, I would argue the other thing too is that it is a way of mitigating some property tax increases for people who are on fixed income, which is also the other reason why I'm reluctant to say, oh, let's just keep raising property taxes, because I know that impacts people in fixed incomes. And I know there may be a lot of them who have a lot of equity in their home, but if they don't want to move and they're living on their Social Security, I don't want to say to them, I'm sorry, you've got to pay more. When we have, part of the reason we added the EIT was to have some more diversity in our tax structure, to not just be solely dependent on real estate taxes. So I just think we have to keep those things in mind.
I think it's a little sitting on the shoulders of Chuchi.
Before you had
guess.
EIT, renters weren't paying anything to the borough. Now that you have an EIT.
They do kind of through their rent though, because they're landlords.
What I'm saying is it kind of makes it more equal in that with all these renters coming into the borough, they're now paying part of their income to the borough.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I actually had dinner with somebody last night. I just realized otherwise she's a renter. She wouldn't be paying any taxes to the borough directly. Indirectly to her rent, I guess. But she works from home 5 days a week for a major law firm in town, and we're getting, 0.5% of her income or her tax, and she's making use of services, borough services. She's parking on the street and taking her trash out and all those things. And otherwise she wouldn't be paying any taxes.
That's a great point, because you clearly, Matt, could not have projected the EIT for the new apartments. So that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
I didn't think of that. And I guess my thought is too, you have to look at tax package as a whole. And I would say, you know, these things, the homestead exception and the keeping the real estate burned down, I mean, I'm very much a believer, I hear it all the time. Senior citizens can't afford to live in Narberth. Senior citizens can't. You know, I've been on the Borough Council for all 3 weeks and I've heard it for the last 10 years. You know, everybody's getting priced out of Narberth, and if the more we put the borough on the real estate taxes and less on the earned income taxes, or the more we're burdening those people. I feel like, and I'm going to be a retiree hopefully in a couple of years, so, you know, I have a little vested interest.
What you're doing is shifting the burden.
A little bit, but
you're not removing the burden, because you're shifting it, again, lower income earners who are unfortunate enough to make over $12,000 a year are.
But if you do the math.
I'd like to move on to the next slide. And I'll just add that no matter what we do with the EIT, the real estate taxes are still going to be the biggest share of the budget. The EIT is never going to catch up to real estate taxes, I don't think. Unless something really changes in the borough. Even if we go up to 1%, real estate would still be the largest single contributor to the budget. You missed something? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Can I just to your point, a $20,000 earner, if we raise the EIT by 0.25%, which is the proposal, it's going to pay $50 more a year in EIT.
You know, when you make $100,000 a year, you can brush that off. When you make $20,000 a year, $50 is $50.
Well, they're going to get more on their property then.
I think we're all clear on the numbers.
I
think we're clear on the numbers. Go ahead.
Healthy conversation. It's good. It's good. These are not easy decisions, and I believe this is the right avenue to have these conversations. So.
Yeah, I mean, we recognize that our discussions and whatever decisions we make have a big impact on the borough. We do take this seriously, obviously.
Okay. So this is a cutoff, I think, about maybe 7 years from my last, from the draft budget to here, but none of these. The 2024 number, total assessed value, did update as of October 31st. It went up just a smidge, not a significant jump between the draft budget and the preliminary budget. Just to give you a sense of historical assessed value and how much the borough had been collecting in real estate tax revenue over the years, past 10 years. That concludes revenues. Now we get into the expense side of things. As a summary, the 2023 actual versus 2024 proposed, I'm sorry, that should have been 2023 budget versus 2024 proposed. Just show you the increases, 12% admin, 10% police, public works at 17, fire ambulance 6, Go all the way down to intrafund transfers, negative 100%, because as I said earlier in the presentation, this budget does not include any transfers to the capital fund. And then the next one, debt service. Debt service. I'm going to get into that slide in more detail in a little bit, but as a summary, we're talking about a 283% change between the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget. So admin, really quickly, that includes a manager, assistant manager, and bookkeeper for the entire year, and an additional office support staff for half the year. As we discussed last week, the half year is to support a new manager, being able to hire this new person, and we've never had 4 people in the office, and I do believe that's a great step in the right direction to fully staff the administrative office. This budget also includes, as a result of conversations that were had at the last meeting, a new line item for professional services, which includes a CPA to review month-end transactions in preparation for audits, to help grants, and a possible management professional service to support administration long-term. One thing I'd like to talk about on this slide that hits every single department, and that is that 24% rate increase for property and liability insurance, which I explained last week, is due to just crazy rates and the largest single claim for Delaware Valley Trusts that was experienced a couple years ago when the tornado went through and took out the Upper Dublin Municipal Complex. Police, no changes here from the draft budget. Chief, sergeant, 4 patrol officers, 1 full-time and part-time parking controller, and 2 crossing guards. I'm sorry, there was a change. I take that back. We did add 1 part-time parking controller as a result of conversations that we had at the meeting a week ago. And if I could talk about, again, administration, that new 4th position. The new 4th administrative position will actually split their time between admin and the police department. So we'll be supporting both departments for administrative reasons. Okay, Public Works, manager foreman, 3 crew members. As we discussed last week, it includes a one-time pay adjustment for staff to stay competitive throughout the Public Works world. And again, we're just minimizing the reliance on that miscellaneous line item, and we're line iteming things that make it more relevant and make the Public Works crew that much more professional. Fire and ambulance, we have 2 full-time housemen. And then this also includes contributions, $100,000 to the Narberth Fire Company, which is split $60,000 for operations and then the $40,000 for capital equipment, which is matched by the Narberth Fire Company. That $40,000 goes into a dedicated capital equipment fund that is a part of the borough's capital fund, capital C, capital F. Lots of capital going on there. That has been a long-standing tradition at the borough for as long as I've been involved. And it also includes $5,000 to Narberth Ambulance, which was the same value that was used for 2023. Narberth Community Library, this budget includes a $276,000 contribution for operating expenses, which represents a $3,000 reduction as a result of the conversation that was had at last week's meeting. And it also includes roughly $32,000 in budgeted utilities and maintenance of that building. One thing that I do want to bring to council's attention is the roof stabilization project that I know most of you, if not all of you, are aware of. We are projecting, as of right now, upwards of a $400,000 cost to repair the roof of the library. This is a capital fund expense, so it's not going to be coming out of the operating budget, and I'm hoping to include that in the draft capital fund budget. I'm hoping for in time for the final budget. Just wanted council to keep their eyes on that one because that's another large expense that was unanticipated. Let's talk about debt service. Debt service represents the lion's share of the increase of the projected budget shortfall for 2024. We talk about percentage of debt. In municipalities, in the public sector, it's a little different than the business sector about the debt load. Municipalities typically look at your total operating budgets, and then you can look at a percentage of that and evaluate a number. Personally, I'm more conservative with debt, especially in the public arena. For a budget of Narberth size, about the $5 to $6 million range, I like it to be no more than 5%. I think that's a much more manageable number. We are almost at 10%, and that is because of the bridge. The bridge loan. There is currently, we have 4 general obligation bonds. 3 of which, one was a consolidation of former debt. The other has $500,000 for the payments of invoices for the bridge, which we will get reimbursed 95% of those costs. And the other was for general building investments as part of the capital fund. The 4th is a $1.5 million general obligation note that is designed to be the down payment for the bridge. Since we're talking about working with Amtrak, it's their right-of-way, there are requirements that have the borough paying a big chunk of money. We will get 95% of that money in return. Unfortunately, we do not have the liquid assets to put $1.5 million down to say, oh yeah, we've got it. We have a lean budget. We have a $6 million, being gracious, a $6 million operating budget. We don't have $1.5 million to just put in a bank for Amtrak. It's like, there we go. So we have to take that out as debt. And so we have not been paying on that debt. And unfortunately, 2024 is the year in which we are required to take the debt out. So I could be talked into reducing the amount of the total debt by about $45,000 if we don't take out the debt until maybe the September-October timeframe. We would only pay half, a portion of it, would free up about $45,000. Unfortunately, it's a cash flow issue, right? So there's going to be a timing issue, and that when the $1.5 million, we're not going to get reimbursed for that right away. That is a security deposit to Amtrak to say, hey, you're good for this project. That is their requirement for any capital improvement project along any of their infrastructure. They require that of anybody. So that's not one that we're going to get 95% back. That's just hey, you got to put it in this account in case anything goes bad, and then at the end of the project, we get it back.
Oh, so it's an escrow?
Yes.
Okay.
But when you show the principal payments here, some of that money is going to be paid from the money we get reimbursed, right? Like, when they reimburse us, can we then pay off the loan early?
Yes, all of the loans can be paid off early. So
right, so this is a worst
This
case.
is the worst case scenario. This is what we have to budget for.
No, I understand
and so,
what we did.
Anytime, so we've got the other, I call it found money, right? We've got, potential sale of property that the borough is in the process of negotiating. That's a potential windfall of money. Don't budget for it. My recommendation is always to put it in your capital fund, which means also debt service. Because if you start paying down your debt service, that has a positive effect on your bottom line.
Right, but all I'm saying is there's a possibility we'll be able to pay down some of the worst case debt service shown here using the reimbursements that we get.
Yes.
Well,
the simple answer is yes.
We don't know when money will be returned to us.
So we can't really budget for it because.
I get that, but I was being sensitive to the comment that our debt service percentage.
So, right, if you take out that $1.5 million, guess what our total debt service is? 5%.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what's bloating it up to 10%, and it's a temporary thing. It's something that, unfortunately, we don't have the means to front, so it's going to skew our data for the next several years.
And that's why we're seeing such a big jump from 2023 to 2024 in debt service, right?
Yes.
Because this is the first year that we have to start paying.
Because we have not been taking it.
Right, but we anticipate having to take it in 2024.
It is a requirement as part of the bond that we need to take the proceeds by October 2024.
Okay, gotcha. And so that's why we're seeing this big change. It's not because we took out some new debt.
No new debt.
Anything like that.
Nope, this is existing debt. This is based upon existing debt schedules for when we are supposed to take all of them.
So last year at this time, we knew this was coming in 2024.
Well, we did not, I don't think we were aware that we were going to have to make this Amtrak payment. The 1.5 million was in case of contingencies that might happen.
And here's the contingency.
We weren't sure that we would need to take out that 1.5 million.
That's true. But it's not like, as I said, it's not something new. We knew that.
And we're still negotiating.
I hope it's not in excess of $1.5 million.
But we're still negotiating that, with them about not making us.
Pulling all that up.
Yeah. But, don't lose sight of the value of each invoice that the borough will receive as part of the project construction. Monthly invoices for a major capital investment, they're going to be some really large invoices. So that, don't lose sight of that. Right. And that's going to eat up that $500,000 that we have in another loan that we already have the cash for. That's the cash flow that we can pay invoices. And since this is a Fed and state thing, it's going to take a while to get that reimbursement. At least in best case scenario, 2 months. That's best case scenario.
Did we also take out a loan to help fund the purchase of the Elmwood property?
Oh yes, thank you. Yes, we did. For which we are in the process. I believe did we submit that today.
Submitted
for reimbursement for $550,000.
But this assumes that we don't.
We are paying the full amount of that. That's represented in this value.
But this assumes that we don't get that money, right?
That's correct.
Right, so again, it could be.
And once we get that money, we can have a conversation of what we want to do with that money.
Which could be to pay off some of this debt service early.
Right. But I need to see it, I need to have it in my hand to then to present it to council. Hey, we have this money, this is what my recommendation is.
I fully respect that, I'm just trying to, like, get you to elaborate a little bit on what you meant by, like, not all debt is the same. Some of it is cash flow debt, and some of it
is real things.
Right? It's like real things that we built that we can't get grants.
Which was a commitment by this council to purchase open space, to do investments in our infrastructure. Yeah, that's represented by the debt. Unfortunately, it's the $1.5 million obligation that's skewing the debt.
Can I ask a crazy question? Just
no.
Okay, I'll try to make it sense. If all these worst case scenarios didn't happen and we ended up with, more money than we anticipated, are we allowed to mid-year say, okay, you know what, we're getting a lot, we have less expenses than we thought, more revenue than we thought, we can go adjust the EIT halfway through the year to
EIT, yep, good question. EIT can be adjusted at any time throughout the year. It's not bound by the real estate tax requirements that have to be adopted by council by the end of this year.
And then you can't change that for the whole year?
Mostly.
Okay.
There are some.
The EIT has more flexibility.
Yeah.
I think we'd be more likely to pay off some of the debt.
I'm just, that's why I'm.
And then we could readjust, and then the next year, when the budgeting process comes around, we can look at real estate taxation or whatever, if we're in position.
You have some significant capital projects that are imminent.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm
not suggesting I would ever vote for
I'm going to say it for the third or fourth time, this budget doesn't include any transfers to the capital fund. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
You need to reinvigorate the capital fund.
Yeah. Or radically adjust our expectations on what this borough can do.
Yes. Any other questions on debt service? I know it's wonky, but unfortunately, as from a budgeting standpoint, we have to budget for the worst case and hopefully be pleasantly surprised by the end of the year. So here is the meat and potatoes of the presentation. I should have just put this slide up. It would have been done. Revenues proposed, expenses proposed. We have a projected budget surplus shortfall, and this is a shortfall. I'm sorry, it should have been a shortfall of $105,000. Should have had that reversed, negative 105. We needed to in other words, we need to use general fund reserves. We need to use about $105,000 to balance this budget. Just to remind council, this budget is required by state law to be balanced. I am mostly comfortable with that number. It's been difficult, as I said last week. The borough hasn't done a good job in projecting end of fund, general fund balances, and so I've done a couple of different models on it, and I project that this would fall within an acceptable range of what we would be able to have by the end of the year, on top of the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, recommendation of having 20%. For us, it's about $1.2 million in reserves. That $1.2 million is essentially for us to span the first few months of the year before real estate taxes start coming in. So that's what this budget represents.
I think it's worth noting that there were times in the last 5 to 10 years when we did not meet that standard.
Took out loans to
when I remember my first tenure, the former councils that predated, I believe all of you, would take out tax anticipation notes, and you're talking about living off of credit cards. Is essentially what it is.
Right.
And so my first run here, we weaned council off of that and got it so that it was really lean. I remember those years, like those first 3 months, it was like checking the cash fund balance like every day, like, all right, can we pay this bill? Because we wanted to make sure that we were only using that money that we had. And to council's credit, in the near past, you actually have a really good cash fund balance, the recommended cash fund balance. So kudos to you all for that long-term planning, and this budget also reflects continuing that into 2024.
Oh, it's absolutely the right thing to do. I mean,
yes.
It was kind of crazy that we were taking payday loans,
Yes.
Yeah.
Any questions on the general fund? That's the big fund, all right? Let's talk about the sewer fund. I highlighted a change from the draft budget to the preliminary budget. If you remember, for those playing at home, the sewer maintenance and planning budget line item for 2024 in the draft budget was $195,000. Excuse me. In discussing this with our Public Works Manager, Jeff Eldon, we thought it would be best for us, for staff to develop, when I say staff, Jeff Eldon, to develop a 5-year sewer maintenance and planning plan. It's a lot of planning. And so what we did, we took that 195 and spread it over a 5-year period where we would be able to maintain and get good data for the entire system over a 5-year span instead of trying to do too much in 1 year. From a staffing standpoint, we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew. We wanted to be successful in this first year. And so that $160,000 represents what we believe is what council should be budgeting for that line item for the next 5 years. What this doesn't include is any additional investment in the capital side of things. This process will feed into a more informed capital planning process inside of the sewer fund for hopefully years 2025 and beyond, which is also then connected to the paving plan. This is all to set up an annual paving plan. We always want to be doing the underground work as much as we can ahead of paving. On a year before paving, we do the underground sewer repairs, and the next year we pave that. So that's also in the works. So what we are recommending, the existing 2023 rate is $2.85 per 1,000 gallons of water used, consumed. The proposed rate is $4.30. And that would fully fund for 2024, and you're going to notice a pretty significant drop in the projected cash fund balances. We're going from 260 to just under 150. So we are absorbing much of that cost of $160,000 inside of our existing cash fund balance. We have to, I'm going to say that cash fund balance is too healthy for an enterprise fund. Enterprise funds that are fed by fees really should be pretty close to a minimal operating level. And my professional recommendation for the sewer would be to not go below $150,000, be around that $140,000 to $160,000 annually. That would enable the borough to respond to critical infrastructure failures and the unbudgeted. Whereas the solid waste fee, there isn't any critical infrastructure that we are maintaining. So that annual number could be lower for the solid waste fund. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the 2025 budget, I just wanted to put this out there. You'll also need to consider another rate increase to smooth that. I talked about that last week. That this is just, we're using a pretty significant amount of reserves in the sewer fund, which is good for this year. But 2025, to get it up to maintain it 150, council will most likely need to entertain another rate increase to stabilize that month or that yearly cash fund balance.
Good. I'll apologize if you said this on Thursday. So we're at 285 right now. What's Lower Merion?
Well, I should have minimized that. I think it's almost double what we pay. It's almost 5, I believe.
Okay, so we're just adjusting to almost the kind of the going rate, but we're still under Lower Merion.
We are. And the point that I wanted to make also is that historically we have not been investing in our sewer infrastructure. And sewer infrastructure is one of the major infrastructure things that we are on the hook for. We own it, we operate it, we maintain it. While we don't have sewage treatment plants, we own all of the infrastructure. And it has been neglected over the years because it's out of sight, out of mind. And so to Jeff Eldon's credit, he wants to take ownership over that because most of it is original. Most of it is terracotta, most of it, right? So this is a way for us to get a better grip on what our infrastructure is and what types of repairs and maintenance needs to happen, which will then influence our capital planning to better maintain our sewer infrastructure.
And one thing Jeff also said last week, with folks who aren't here, is And it's very expensive to do patchwork. We have to hire outside contractors, it's an emergency basis, if sewer line breaks, there's, sewage in the street, you gotta get somebody there right away. In the long term, this is actually gonna hopefully be revenue neutral because we won't have those emergent conditions if we're properly maintaining our sewer pipes. So investing up front might save us more money in the long run.
That's a good point. Proactive maintenance. Any questions on the sewer fund? All right, the last fund, we're almost done. Solid waste fund. And I think this is not a surprise slide. I think we've talked about this through public comment. This is the major increase of the year. I am recommending a double of each rate. It is the current rate to meet our expected expenses. Any questions on solid waste? I don't have anything else to add to it. We've already talked about this previously. So in order for us to make sure that this is solvent, we need to double everybody's rates. Everybody's. So if you look at 2023 compared to 2024, it's double.
And this just represents us passing the fee that we are charged by our trash hauler directly on the residents.
That is assuming that the bid is accepted during tonight's meeting, which is on the
in general.
Yes.
The borough just.
Yeah. I mean, you're not making money off of this. Right. This is to pay the bills. Right. If you also notice, we do pay the tax collector out of this as part of it. There are some other fees. The other thing that the bid also includes is spring cleanup. And that number went up about $4,000 from 2023. So that is something that council can consider during this evening's motion to accept that bid as to whether or not to accept the service alternate of the spring cleanup. I want to remind everyone that this is just the 2024 budget. 2025 budget, there is, according to the bid, is a 3% increase. So expect slight increases to the fees for the next 4 years as well. I thought about averaging out the next 4 years to get us there to be one, but decided, you know what, let's just do year over year. Any questions on solid waste?
And I'm sorry, eliminating the spring cleanup week saves $10,000.
Yeah.
And that's Shark Week in Narberth. Yep. To Shark Week in Narberth.
Which would, in the grand scheme of things, not significantly have an effect on this budget.
Conceptual parties.
Yeah. Right?
It's also a spring cleanup week that I've noted helps people clear out the house, helps with fire hazards in the house. I think it's the same. It's helpful for safety reasons.
So to conclude, this is really what everybody wants to know. The estimated increase per household, and this is residential household, is $477 per year, or just under $40 per month. This is not including any changes to EIT, because I do not have access to that data. I cannot extrapolate that out to know what the average change to each property would be. Sorry, can't do it. What this represents is, the lion's share of it is a $400 increase in solid waste fees, that's the doubling, and then a more modest $77 increase in sewer fees, and that's annually. Next steps tonight on the agenda is to first adopt this preliminary budget, and once we adopt it, you can then authorize staff to advertise, and then it becomes available for public inspection between probably tomorrow and through December 21st, where we are scheduled, where council is scheduled to entertain the adoption of the final budget. That's it.
Can I ask a process question?
Okay.
So if I wanted to propose that we consider moving the EIT to 1%, does that happen now?
Yes.
Or that happens now?
I would encourage any changes to this preliminary budget to be made under Exhibit B, under consideration, or...
I think we've got the wrong order here. I think the budget should be first and the EIT should be second, probably. I don't know if there's a way to go out of order on the.
No, because the budget is determined based upon EIT.
The budget presumes.
All right, fair enough, so 10B. So when we
And
get
so,
to 10B. right
while
now,
we say 0.75, you can, as part of your motion, make changes to which staff will make prior to the advertisement of the official preliminary budget. Then it becomes an official document.
So the motion is not in order at that time, but it will be soon. Any other questions? So I'll point out that the available for public inspection is more of a formality.
It is, and so there will be a paper copy in the office, and we will also post it on the website digitally.
But the time for changes is tonight.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the time to make changes and to
yes.
Get the budget ready to go. Public inspection will be just so everybody knows
you
what's
can
happening.
make minor adjustments to the budget, and anything in excess of, it's a pretty small margin, means you are required to then re-advertise. We just don't have enough time to do that. So pretty much the preliminary budget will become your final budget.
Thank you.
I just wanted to have one comment to thank both Matt and Alan.
Yes.
Because this has been so Herculean effort with very little, notice. And we really appreciate the effort you put into getting, there was times, like 3 or 4 weeks ago when, I did not think we would, have this budget, on this date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, seriously.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
I'm tenacious.
And I just want to say, having never been through this process before, that's an extra time with me to explain finance to me in ways that made sense to me, and I really appreciate you doing that. I've been on council for all 2 weeks, and this is, my first Herculean task, I think, and I really would not have been able to be informed in the way that I am but for Matt. So.
Well, thank you. I'm not one to, take the accolades, but it is a true team effort, and I could not have done it without my staff. My staff have stepped up, and I could not have done it without council and mayor. And this truly was a team effort, and I appreciate the support you have all given me in feedback in changing the system. This is a unique year, and this is certainly not how I would like to do it, but hey, it is what it is. So, thank you.
All right, I don't see any more questions, so let's move on to the consideration items. First item is the trash bid. So you want to make a motion?
I move council approve the award, approval of the award solid waste contract base bid and service alternate spring cleanup, setting the total cost for collection for terms of 24 to 27.
Yep, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so I texted Jean earlier. I can't see you right now, Jean, but if you want to speak up, please text me or just say something. we'll get to you. All right. Discussion of the solid waste bid. Let me talk about something that we haven't really talked about, which is, let's say we were to reject this bid and we did not re-advertise. What would be the result? What would happen if we rejected this bid and did not advertise?
It would become the Wild West, and every property would need to find their own trash hauler within a month.
Let's vote.
Well, hold on. Yeah, I see no interest in that outcome on council, for good reason, I would say.
Well, the committee of public health essentially recommended one hauler. So that was a recommendation.
Do we have any more discussion or any more questions for Mr. DeGennaro? All right, in that case, we are voting to approve the solid waste contract. All those in favor of approving the bid? Any opposed to the bid? Okay. And, to the community, we all have to pay this too. So we are not excited to see the price double, but
we understand the world that we're in.
Yeah.
This is,
I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure you won't be disappointed with our company service.
We're hoping that there are missed deliveries when we call you.
I'm not that far, I probably run by your house every day.
That's on record.
yes.
Keep an eye on it.
And
What
we-
was your address again?
Yeah. And we look forward to hearing from you what is recyclable in a very clear, detailed way, because there are people in this
Absolutely.
community who want to know about,
Our
is
community-
this little thing recyclable or not?
Our
Because they
communications
really want
director
to
will work with your staff because we'll have a flyer going out.
Super, that'd be great,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
And I'll just leave a handful of these because this is what was attached to the letter to show you what
Right.
this Arflex plastic is, if you don't know.
Right,
We'll be in
yeah,
touch.
yeah, we,
It,
yeah.
it looks like the kind of things you would recycle at the grocery store, right?
Exactly.
Plastic film.
Well,
or
some
not.
of it, some of it isn't, so it's very exciting.
Yeah,
Some of it's
yeah.
stuff you can't take there.
Al, you and I will be in contact
Thank you. We'll be in
for
touch.
logistics to get your event done. Right?
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a good
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. 10B, EIT.
Can I make a motion to approve to advertise an ordinance raising the borough earned income tax to 1.0%?
So we have,
Or do I
we
need
have
to
an
amend
agenda
it?
item. I think you need to amend
yeah,
it. So
I think-
bring it to the table as currently written.
Right.
Okay.
Propose what's currently on the agenda.
Okay, I move to approve, advertise an ordinance raising the borough's earned income tax to 0.75% after January 1, 2024 on all earned income tax by residents of Norwood Borough, by non-residents of Norwood Borough, within the confines of the borough, and on all net profits earned by businesses. Can you read this over? No, okay.
As
Thank you.
stated.
As stated, thank you.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second this.
Okay. So this, all right, 10B, the ordinance on the EIT is now on the table. Discussion is appropriate, or if you wish to immediately propose an amendment, you may also do so at this time.
Can I move to please amend motion 10B to read the approval of the advertisement ordinance raising the borough's earned income tax to 1.0%?
Whoever seconded the original motion, you can second that.
Well, can anybody second it at this point?
Second.
All right, well then I'll second it so we can
Okay.
talk about it.
So we are now discussing this potential amendment. Yeah, we have to vote on the amendment, and then we'll have to vote again on the actual bill. All right. So we are now discussing amending this to be 1%. So Cindy, why don't you talk about your proposal?
Well, I
You need to, you take a vote on
Yeah,
the
to amend it.
amendment.
I think we're allowed to have a discussion on the amendment, aren't we?
No, we have to vote to accept it.
We can discuss the amendment, certainly.
You can discuss that.
Yeah.
We've done it
Okay.
before, haven't we?
Well, I think we had a party discussion. You know, I think 1% reflects our comprehensive plan. It is an equitable approach versus an equal approach of raising everyone's property taxes. And I just did a great job doing the reality of the borough. You know, we all inherited lots of deferred maintenance. We were living on credit cards. And again, I would like to suggest that a 1% EIT is consistent with the other 211 municipalities and is the equitable approach as we see in the comprehensive plan. And we discussed this, so.
I would say going from 0.5 to doubling it without letting the community have opportunity to weigh in on doubling of the, as opposed to a 50% increase, a 100% increase is not particularly fair notice to the community. Again, I would reiterate my objections that it's falling on the shoulders of either too small a population, and although other municipalities have 1%, most of those municipalities have to give those half of that to their school districts. We are unique in that we would be getting double what most other municipalities receive, and that the fairer way to do this would be to, maybe raise some, which again I'm not totally in favor of, but to do it on a property basis. I think that's a fair way to do it.
Can I ask, so if we did that, if we went to the 1%, Matt, would that mean that we don't have to take any money from general reserves to make up the shortfall.
That's correct.
And we would have then a small surplus, right?
That's correct.
And so that.
At which point, the council can then consider later to do a budget amendment to allocate any money to the capital fund.
Right, that's what I was thinking, that could then be used for, to fund transfer to the capital.
That would be my professional recommendation.
Yeah.
If we adopt.
Yes.
Because I thought your recommendation was to 0.75%.
If council moves to 1%, then we would have a surplus that we could then allocate to the capital fund. I think that's what Matt's saying. If we went to 1%, that would be his recommendation for what to do with.
Right. I just want to make clear that he wasn't recommending a 1% tax.
My recommendation was 0.75 because that's the leanest amount to get us close to being balanced. If council wishes to pass 1%, I would welcome that because it makes it that much easier and it would actually give us some breathing room to fund the capital fund.
I'll just say I see the logic of this. I do hesitate this year just because of the large increase in the solid waste fee on top of it. That's my hesitation. I mean, originally we had considered going to 1% last year. When we were doing this, we weren't exactly sure how much that would raise. That was one of the reasons we stayed at 0.5. That's no longer as much of an issue. We're pretty clear on how much it's going to raise, but we have these unanticipated debt service effects that require. I'm just torn with doing it now because of the.
So if we don't do this, if we just are at the 0.75 and we use some of the general reserve general fund reserves to make up our shortfall, where are we going to get some money to put into the capital fund? And so I think the option for that is to raise real estate taxes.
Not really. As a reminder, the debt service budget assumes that we don't get the grant money for Elmore.
That's true.
Which is $500,000.
Which is found money. That is not a year-over-year
Right.
expectation.
No, it's not a year-over-year expense. If we're talking about funding the capital fund, it could go to.
But in 2024, it would not address future budgets.
No.
And if we sell the revenue that we potentially are going to get for Haverford also go in the capital fund.
Or debt service.
Yeah.
Or debt service, right?
What it goes
So, and that's not accounted for in this budget. So that's another $800,000 or so potentially that we could have money to put it either in the capital fund or.
Well, but I mean, I think
that's one time.
Right, it's one time,
but that's what we're talking
that's
about
why.
funding the capital fund.
Right, but that's why I'm kind of with, I'm a little loath to double the tax. You know, we are substantially raising the solid waste tax. I mean, we're doubling it. You know, that's a pretty significant, hefty increase. I recognize the mayor's concerns about spreading it, and I think, you know, doing it partially on the tax, on the EIT, partially solid waste, partially, you know, real estate seems like a better way to actually spread it out. And I don't believe that we shouldn't raise it at all. I think we have to raise it because we have this budget shortfall.
So Mike, just to
I'm
point
kind of
out,
loath to go up to 1%.
we're not doubling people's taxes.
No.
Well, because that's going to be the soundbite on Facebook now.
Okay, fair enough. Right.
We've all, I think, agreed raising property taxes to everyone is not the approach that council wants to take. We're not doubling everyone's EIT. Right? We don't know, unfortunately, the good data. Most people pay 1%, right? 211 municipalities. You're only asking the folks that currently have had a grace period from an EIT to now, I know, you know, that we're now asking them. So it's really, not all of Narberth is getting their EIT doubled. In fact, probably a very small percentage. So I just want to point that out there.
No, I agree.
And you're bringing,
Right, and you're bringing the revenue.
And you're bringing existing funds that are going elsewhere back home. We're also adding how many apartments that will not be captured in any of this, So we're adding new revenue, thank you, Alan, for pointing out apartment revenue from the EIT. So, and then I would just say, we also need to have a real honest conversation with the projects that we keep talking about, because we're at a, what, $116,000 deficit. And we still have these aspirations for Station Square and a master park plan and green space. Then we have to do one or the other. You know, NARBs need to either say, we understand that we're going to have to pay the 1% that other municipalities, some of us, are going to pay, or we need to manage our expectations.
If I may, I think the term grace period presumes you're going to have this tax, and for the entire history of Narberth, we never have this tax. I don't think there's a grace period. It's a new tax.
No, for people who live in Narberth.
For people who live in Narberth, right. It's a new tax. It's not a grace period. It's not presumed it's going to be. It's a new tax.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, for the people who work in Philadelphia exclusively, which is a lot, a number of people in the borough, it's not going to affect them. It's going to fall on the shoulders of the few. And as Councilwoman Rickard said, the few. It is going to hit the few. And I think that's not terrible.
Sorry, we're just trying to see if our remaining council member is available, given that we're at a decision point. Ira?
No, I was just going to call for a vote.
Hi. I can. Oh, can I speak to this?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jean.
You're there.
Yes. So I really do believe the borough needs to financially position itself for the upcoming capital expenditures. You know, we have the master park plan project going on, and we have a lot of infrastructure maintenance and improvements that we need to also address. And just for financial sustainability, allowing for a lot of the economic impacts that pretty much every municipality in this area are experiencing, which is inflation, high interest rates, and what could be a potential economic downturn. I don't think we can keep kicking the can on this, and I do think we need that that EIT increase. I do recognize the fact that this year is going to be a tough year for people experiencing the solid waste increase of doubling that fee. And I would be comfortable with raising it to 0.25%, raising it by 0.25% this year, and looking to increase it again the following year. And that's just because I'm recognizing that this is a huge increase for a lot of residents. But I think we need to look ahead and see what's coming, and there's a lot of things that we want to do. We want to improve our parks, and we need to fix our library roof, and those things take capital, and we're going to need that.
Rob, you want to do that, or Ira?
Just that, for several years we didn't have any tax increase. I think our last millage increase was 2019. So, I worry that as a community we've gotten used to not paying more in taxes while our expenses keep going up and up. Cost of living increases for staff are reasonable and expected, and that's how we retain good people in the office. So, to my mind, there should be an expectation that the taxes will go. I agree with what Jean's saying. If we do the 0.75, we should expect to increase it next year to 1. Because the expenses keep going up, and even at this rate, we're not fully covering the shortfall.
So the question to that is, why wouldn't you slightly increase property? Because it's a property tax. Why are you keeping going back to the same one?
Yeah, no, we could do that. We could do that next year. We could do a combination. But I guess I'm uncomfortable with the what has been the status quo, not raising tax over
That's property taxes.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, and we didn't have EIT either.
right, so, but the.
So
We are talking about it.
Yeah, no,
Right,
we
but-
are, but I think we should expect that next year we'll have to do this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And that's what Dean said, you know, so if we're not gonna do it now, we're probably gonna do it next year. And
Or
next year
we could discuss a slight bump in property.
probably we'll have to
And so
talk
it's
about
not
it.
going back to the same thing. I feel like it.
All right, right now, what's on the table is a change to this, to 1%. So I'd like to, I think everyone's had a chance to speak. All right, so let's vote on this amendment. This is an amendment to change the EIT to 1% rather than 0.75%. All those in favor of amending it to 1% rather than 0.75%? Okay, all those opposed?
Okay.
The amendment fails. Okay.
This all again next year. Yeah, exactly.
You'll be gone.
Yeah.
You'll be in favor.
Yes.
I'll be a resident.
Yeah.
Simple resident.
And say don't break.
All right, so we are back to the original proposal, which is to raise the EIT to 0.75%. Is there any further discussion at this time of this proposal? All right, so we are voting to advertise to raise the EIT to 0.75%.
To advertise the
We're
ordinance.
voting to advertise, what did I say? We're voting to advertise an ordinance raising the borough's EIT to 0.75%.
So to be clear, this vote, and this is for the public too, this is not the vote that raises it. This would be a vote that would allow us to advertise it, and then if so approved, it would be a hearing at the December business meeting. And that would be a vote for council after that duly advertised hearing. If that's approved, then it would take effect February, because Thursday required 30 days to get it working with the DCE.
All right. So we're voting to advertise the ordinance. All those in favor of advertising the ordinance? Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Next item is the budget.
I move to adopt 2024 preliminary budget and approve the advertisement of the budget for public review.
Second.
All right, second. Is there further discussion of the budget at this time? So we had a substantial discussion during the budget presentation.
You want me to go through it again?
Yeah.
This is a short.
So can I ask a question about this? So if we wanted to cover the shortfall and have some modest amount to put in the capital fund, at this point, we would need to raise real estate taxes.
But that's not, again, let me just say again, we're gonna get a payment for the Elmwood Park
All right,
sometime
so
next
then,
year.
so then let me say something else then. If we wanted to cover the shortfall without having to dip into our general fund reserves, we would have to raise real estate taxes. So that, I'm just trying to.
$100,000,
I just
yes.
want to make sure that everybody understands that, and I don't mean everybody at the table, because I think we all do, but just everyone understands that by not raising the real estate taxes, we do have a shortfall, we do have, we don't have money right now to put into our capital fund. And so that's just another reason why Rob is saying, and I agree with him, I think we've all gotten too used to long stretches where no taxes go up. And I think that is going to always end up putting us into this kind of position where we have a shortfall and we maybe don't have money to fund the capital fund. And so I think it's just something that I think councils need to keep in mind, that while nobody likes to raise taxes, nobody likes to have their taxes raised on them, there are things, you just have to do that because time marches on and our costs go on. So.
But there are two, there's one thing that we heard about tonight, pretty much for sure, that there's going to be excess in EIT this year, and then also we don't know what the general fund surplus will be this year.
Yeah, I think the advice of our general manager is that drawing down our surplus 100,000 will still leave us with the 1.2 million that is recommended.
I'm confident that.
Yeah.
So that is this year. So it is reasonable to do it this year.
And I think to Barbara's point, one other thing we have to recognize is one of the reasons we've been able to keep ahead of the costs going up is, quite frankly, the real estate value is going up so high, which has dramatically increased the transfer tax. You know, we've actually been very lucky that real estate prices have skyrocketed in that regard. It's somewhat allowed us to not have to, you know, raise taxes. So, you know,
I would say, Barbara,
it's catching up to us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would also point back to that comprehensive plan. We're aging in place. When you raise the property, it's never going down. You lose your job, your property tax is still high.
Exactly. I'm not saying that you would raise property taxes and not raise the EIT or something like that. I'm just saying that there is, again, to me, that's another argument to have more diversified taxing ability, because you don't want to be so dependent on property taxes, but being in this position of always expecting that your taxes don't increase is just not realistic unless you're willing to have services cut a lot. And so it's just something that I think, I just want to make sure people are thinking of that and recognizing that, oh, you know, I don't live in a world where all of my taxes are flat forever. We just don't.
Right.
We don't like to, but we don't.
Right.
So I do want to point out that this is really our chance to make any changes to the budget itself, like to individual budget items. I don't believe I've heard any desire on council to do so. Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, I mean, is this the place where we would make a decision about the request from the food bank, or is that?
It's a good point. We have one outstanding, we have one outstanding request. So we, at our last meeting, we dealt with requests from the fire department and from the library for funding. Council members asked for more information from the Narberth Food Bank on the number of residents who were served by the food bank, number of Narberth residents, and there was a further request for some financial information. We received an answer from the food bank. Based on that request, or based on that information, does anyone wish to amend the budget to add a figure for support for the food bank? I think that would be the procedure at this time. If you want to add an item, or what would it take? Yeah. All right.
Point, Barbara, to what you've always said. I think one of the first times I was at the table, a nonprofit came to us, and you really articulated that as council people, it's really not our decision on what nonprofits to fund with tax dollars, that it really is up to individual residents. You know, the fire and the library are arguably two public goods. We have 3 to 5 years of their financials. We understand that that's very different than smaller nonprofits. You stated it much more eloquently, but that really reframed my thinking.
Because when I was on council the first time, it had just been sort of well, every year we give X amount to these different organizations, and because of the need to consider tax increases, we were looking at the budget to say, well, should we keep doing this? And at that time, council decided that it really wasn't council's place to decide on the behalf of every taxpayer what charitable organization we would support. And so, and we looked at something like the fire department and said, well, that's different. If we didn't have a volunteer fire department, we would have paid fire service, either, through some other municipality that we had an agreement with, or our own. The library is a similar kind of thing, so, but other organizations, it was really recognized it's not an essential government service. Is it an essential human service? Yes, and that's why I donate to the food bank, but is that something that the municipality should be doing? That was it, and that council kind of decided no, that really wasn't, at that time, anyway, that was council's decision. Every council can decide for themselves, but yeah. Thank you.
I'll add that we just voted down a tax increase and we're planning to run a deficit next year, so
exactly.
I'm hesitant to add expenses.
It wouldn't be the right year to do it. If it was even everybody.
Right.
All right, I don't hear any amendments to the budget. So if there's no further discussion, we will vote on adoption of the 2024 preliminary budget and approval to advertise the budget for public review. All those in favor of adopting the preliminary budget? Okay. All right, that passes unanimously. We haven't even talked about this. 10D.
Okay. I move that Borough Council approve the advertisement of amendments to Chapter 475, Vehicles and Traffic, and Chapter 446, Streets and Sidewalks.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about parking. This is the third parking ordinance that has come before council since the committee, the ad hoc parking committee was formed in October of 2021. I haven't gone through it to look for sure, but I have a feeling that all of Chapter 475 has been touched at this point. So our Vehicles and Traffic chapter has been brought up to date, well, and with this ordinance, if council adopts it, brought up to date with our current practices, as well as reflecting improvements and changes that came about through the parking study task force, recommendations of our staff, our parking enforcement and police officers. So there's a lot that has gone into this, and like the budget, this was a real team effort. There's been so many people involved in this over time, and I really am thankful for everybody who's worked on that. So what we're considering tonight is a vote to advertise the ordinance, and that would mean that we would be in a place to vote to adopt it at our December 21st business meeting. We don't have to take any action on the resolution until that time of adoption, but the resolution is included in the packet because you really need to see everything together to understand what is being amended. So the draft ordinance that you have is the same, well, and the resolution are the same as the ones that I presented at October 5th with a few changes. I mean, we now have the list of all the 2-hour permitted parking areas, so, you know, street, block, that kind of thing. We have reflected the adjustment to the enforcement days that council agreed to in the central neighborhood. Certain blocks will have Monday through Saturday protection just as they do now, but the other blocks will be Monday through Friday. There's the filled out stop sign locations chart, so we now have all our stop signs listed, which we should have had, so it's great to have those in there. We have the parking meter locations chart in the resolution. We have the neighborhoods map in the resolution. This reflects the July 1st, 2024 effective date for the changes to the permit parking program, the residential permit parking program. The office recommended that date. That'll give them time to get ramped up and ready to implement it. The fees for 2024 will be prorated, so cut in half, so for when the new system starts, but then everyone will renew annually at the annual rate. We've clarified in the resolution that people who are parking at parking meters and using the Park mobile app pay the associated fees. It didn't have that as clear as I liked in the language initially, so I made that a little clearer. Thanks to, we've also added a prohibition of storing cars on the street for the purpose of commercial repairs or commercial sales. And then, thanks to Councilmember Borough, we added the ability for the borough to regulate dumpsters and temporary storage units on the streets and sidewalks. That's the change that's in Chapter 446 on streets and sidewalks. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions on what's in there. I'm happy to answer them, but, you know, it's, as I said, this is basically the same as what you've seen before. It just reflects some recent decisions of council, the October 5th, then October 19th. On November 2nd, we talked a little bit about, I keep talking about parking at every meeting, I think.
So,
quick question.
Yeah.
So what's the plan to get this out to the community again? I know that.
The changes to the permit parking program, is that what you're thinking of, the
Well,
residential?
just overall, yeah.
The overall? Well, most of the things aren't really changes. It's just getting our code to match what we currently do.
Right, I see. So, but aren't there some changes because, you know, like they would take place, you know, later on?
To the residential permit, so the 2-hour blocks, is that what
That's
you're?
in there, right?
Right, it is. That's what the office is, that's why they're saying they would like a July 1st effective date for those, so that'll give them time to get ramped up education materials out, notifications to notify people, here's how you do the renewal process, or here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
That's not anything we have to put in the ordinance.
But would that, no, I get that.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to make sure that,
Sure.
that we don't, that we have a plan.
That's a plan for the staff to.
And I just have one other question.
Yeah.
So let's say this is adopted, right? And then a particular block decides that they want to, you know, sort of opt out.
Right.
Will they have enough time between, like, when it's passed and this July date to go through that process?
We didn't anticipate the request to remove, I don't know.
Well, once the ordinance is passed, wouldn't they?
Well, so the process to request a new zone or remove a zone is in the resolution. It's not in the ordinance. Solicitor Walker recommended that we structure it that way. So that's not part of our official code. That's an administrative kind of way. And so.
Okay, well, let me ask the question just like more directly,
Sure.
which is, independent of where it fits in the code and all that, would they have enough time?
Well, but that's what I'm trying to answer your question.
They have 6 months to.
All you have to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
what you have to do is just get a list of a certain number of the property
60%,
owners.
60%,
60% of the property
Yes.
owners on a petition saying, take us off this
Right,
list,
but-
so
So
that's
yes.
it, that's
But
the
I
next
know,
step.
well, no, but
It's
can
at
I
council's
just?
discretion now.
Right, well,
Yeah.
yes, it's at
Yes.
council's discretion, that
Yeah.
council doesn't have to go along with it if, you know, there's a reason, a compelling reason not to, but let me just, I just want to clarify something, Ira, and that's why I was saying I wanted to, let me say one more thing. You know, you're saying, is there enough time? And I think you're saying, is there enough time for them to make the change before this becomes effective July 1st?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, so if the office is comfortable having those petitions come to you before July 1st, because they will come to you and then come to council, then I need to change the resolution so the effective date for that provision isn't July 1st, it's immediate. That's why I was trying to ask my question, Ira. So, and that's a question for the office. If Ira is wanting people, I think, this is what he's saying, I don't want to put word in his mouth, but I think he wants people over the next 6 months to be able to try and petition their neighbors to take away 2-hour zone and have that effective before July 1st, so then they don't have to go through the process.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. The reason why I say this is because I know that there are people who feel very strongly about this. And so I just want to make sure that, like, they can adjust it before.
I know, but I guess I would say, you know, whether it's before or after the July 1st date, it's not that big a difference. I mean, I don't
It might
think
be
it
to
is,
that.
but
So
that's what I was gonna say. Well, so-
I think that if we get wind that somebody wants out,
No.
we just won't enforce on that street.
No. Well, I will change the resolution so that provision is effective immediately.
We're not passing that resolution.
Exactly,
right
but
now.
I'm saying I'll make that change. I was asking for it, so I'll make that change. The ordinance doesn't have that in it, so we can easily do it in the resolution.
So it does sound, so voting in favor of this, so voting for advertising these amendments will not, it'll be changed for later. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask one clarifying part?
Sure.
Where again is the violation for cars that are being stored
That
to
is
be
in-
parked on? What,
That is-
Subsection 2.
Yeah, 475-2, it's on page 2, kind of in the middle of the, so it's number C there. No person shall
Okay,
stand
got it,
parked
sorry.
vehicle. There you go.
and then the violation is what?
Whatever what is that general violation?
Yeah,
I don't know.
$25 a day.
$25 a day.
Correct.
Well, that would be in addition if they were breaking the parking rules and other ways.
Yeah.
That would be forbidding the vehicle on sale.
So would you, I'm sorry, so that you could double dip and say it doesn't have a 2-hour zone and it appears to be that
I wouldn't think so.
you would not. Okay, so essentially move the violation from what was it, like $12 to $25.
Correct.
But it also makes, it makes it illegal to store there at all, which is, you know, but right now.
That's true for, and that would be anywhere, right? Not just the 2 hours.
Anywhere, yeah, it doesn't, it's whether it's a 2-hour regulated street or not, it's not permitted anywhere.
Is this graduated? Where?
Per day.
Yeah, I thought that we did that.
No, that's per day, yeah, that's per day.
Okay, so it's probably not gonna solve our problem.
Well, technically, I think then, I have to go through it, but there's probably language that would also allow court action to be taken.
There is, that, I guess that was.
Need be for that ongoing violation.
Okay.
If council wanted to pursue the next level of enforcement.
Okay, so that is, I guess my question is, what recourse do we have other than someone saying, okay, I'll $25 a day to rent storage is not bad?
Providing it as a violation of our code would then allow us to take injunctive relief to enforce our code if needed.
Okay.
Well, and does it allow us to tow too? Is this one of the situations?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. I lose track of which places were allowed.
All right, any other questions?
However, am I right that some of the stop intersections that are listed are new?
They're not new, they are there, they've never been in the code.
They have signs there. Those signs were not reflected at.
Well, like I'm looking at Haverford, it says stop intersections, the following provide for stop sign installations. It's Haverford, Shirley East, Haverford, Shirley West. I know there are no stop signs there now. Is this saying that affirmatively there would be stop signs or that we would be allowed to put them there?
No,
Okay.
this list is coming from the Public Works Department. And
It's
they
on
said
Shirley,
this is
not
fine.
Haverford. It's on Shirley.
Oh, coming to, okay, gotcha, not Haverford to ship, gotcha.
Yeah, right. So I have not checked these.
Okay.
So I'm depending, and I really trust what Jeff Belvin and Mike Kennedy and all the
Gotcha.
crew.
No, I misread it because I was
Yeah.
thinking the Haverford, coming
Yes.
down Haverford,
Yeah.
there are no stop signs there. No.
Okay, yeah, okay. Any other questions?
Just for members of the community, this has been an extended process moving this through Borough Council. This is the most recent meeting where we're discussing this, but there have been many, so it's been a long process.
I have a quick question if I can ask it, Fred.
I'm sorry, it's just council at this point.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. I apologize.
I don't actually, yeah.
It was purely a parking question. It was just an innocent question. I didn't know if residents with a sticker could park in town at meters or
No,
not.
a parking permit or parking sticker does not get you off from feeding the meter. You still have to feed the meter.
Okay, which I do, by the way. I thought it would be like a nice bonus for the tax increase or something like that, you know? But anyway.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, coming back to the ordinance, any more discussion? Oh, yeah. All right, well, we wait for Councilman Rickers to come back in. Any other discussion at this point then?
I just wanted to thank Barbara again for working on this. And I also want to thank you for adding that regulation for the dumpsters and the temporary storage containers. I think that's really needed.
Thank you, Jean. Yeah, thank you for pointing it out because it's not something that would be included in the vehicles and traffic chapter. So it wasn't even something that occurred to the parking committee to even think about. So thank you.
We shouldn't be. Unless we take a formal recess, council members, I'm not sure, I'm probably you as well, not supposed to leave the room, except when there's an actual recess.
If you have a
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Well, I think we'll take the vote at this point. So we're voting to advertise amendments to Chapter 475 and Chapter 446. All those in favor of advertising amendments? Any opposed? All right, this is 6-0.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay. Let's move on to 10E.
What's 5-0?
No,
6.
Jean's
Jean.
online.
Oh, Jean, okay.
Oh, did I vote? Yeah, I'm
All
sorry.
right, you want to vote retro? We haven't moved on yet. All right. Can I add your vote? Okay, go ahead. 7-0. Item 10E. The master plan scope of work. Want to make that motion, Jean?
Sure. Sorry, I gotta bring it up on my screen. I move to approve to remove Sabine Park from the master park plan scope of work.
Is there a second? Okay, Jean, why don't you explain what this motion is about?
Sure. So on November 9th, the chair and vice chair of the Master Park Planning Committee, Rebecca Moore and Michael Gaudini, and we met with DCNR to discuss the scope of work and the RFP, and specifically to get feedback on how to allow in our RFP for flexibility in the Sabine parcel, considering that we don't know the direction of the 211 Sabine project, and that would mean that it would have an uncertain timeline, lot location, and size. So the advice that we got from DCNR, they recommended for us to remove the Sabine Park from the scope of work. And the reasoning was that because this particular funding uses federal ARPA funding, the requirements are more strict and the deadlines are very strict. So with the uncertainty of the 201 Sabine project and how that's going to move forward, that might risk our ability to complete all of the project site plans, including Sabine Park, within the grant deadlines. So considering that the committee members, Michael, Rebecca, and I agree with that recommendation. And I also want to note that our representative at DCNR has also communicated to us that once we confirm the direction of the 201 Sabine project and are ready to move forward with Sabine Park, it would still put us in a good position to reapply for funding in the next grant cycle for just Sabine Park. And for DCNR, they would view this as the responsible thing to do, to remove Sabine Park from this particular RFP and consider it as a separate project.
And to be clear, council's two proposals for what to do with the Sabine property include making it all a park and expanding the park space, but allowing a corner of the property to be sent out via an RFP process for proposed development.
As a way to continue to have revenue from the property.
Yeah. Sabine, as you recall from the budget presentation, revenue from the Sabine property, which the borough rents out, is a significant contributor to the borough budget. So this would allow us to retain some of that financial benefit to the borough, while also allowing its natural location on Montgomery Avenue to be used for, much like the other properties on Montgomery Avenue, to be developed while retaining more park space for the borough than they're currently, sorry, a little tired. It's not coming out straight, but basically Borough's ideas for this property have not changed. The reason for this, as you heard from Gene, is that the master park plan may not be able to accommodate both of these ideas at the same time and complete in a timely manner. That's the concern here.
Yeah, so the main concern from DCNR was the timeline in terms of getting this project complete within the grant deadlines. So it's not, it wasn't a problem with the project itself. They just, because there was so many uncertainties with the project in terms of the timeline and also exactly what size the lot was going to be, that was their recommendation.
Do Borough staff have any concerns with that idea, that remove it from the planning process now and potentially add it back in later on?
It's not uncommon to amend a adopted park master plan to include additional park space. You can always amend it and include that and have it specific to that park, to which then it would be amended to the master plan.
All right.
That's not uncommon.
It just seems to me to make sense to, I mean, DCNR does a lot of this. This is what they do. And I have to believe that, you know, they're making this recommendation because they feel this is the best way for us to be successful in getting any grants, getting the master park plan moving. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
I do have one concern, which is that, I mean, presumably if we do the design for the Norwood Park, which is, I guess is the vast majority of the work that would happen in this part, that there would be certain functions that might not, you know, that we might have a set of desires for what should go in Norwood Park that may exceed what goes there. And, you know, I think we should at least like anticipate the notion that we might have another place to house some of those functions.
Yeah, but I don't know, Gene, correct me if I'm wrong, but this isn't suggesting that there would be like years delay before master park planning was done for 201 Sabine. I think what it means is that, you know, council needs to really get some, in the not too distant future, make some decisions on 201 Sabine independent of the master park plan, so that then it could be amended to include 201 Sabine, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, let me just reword it and then I'll stop. It's going to assume that at least as much space is available in the park at Sabine as there is now.
Yes. No, so more, because okay, council's committed to way more.
Okay, so more.
Yeah.
So that, like, they won't have to try to squeeze everything in the plan into Norwood Park, because they know that there'll be another place where they can put some of the functions.
Yes, I guess, but I think what we're probably saying, I think the way this sounds to me, and Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like there would be kind of two parallel tracks for a little bit, that the master park plan work would get started, but council would then be making decisions about 201 Sabine, and you would merge then something into the master park plan for 201 Sabine before they got finished with the master park plan for everything else. Is that?
Right. I mean, so I believe we're looking at revisiting the 201 Sabine RFP at the beginning of next year, which would maybe take us into the later that year to be able to receive the responses and see what kind of responses we get. But the fact is, we won't really know the direction until we get those responses.
Yeah, I'm just trying to avoid a scenario where we design something, right? We spend a lot of money designing something, and then something else changes, and we have to throw away the initial design.
Oh, do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I'm just
Gene? I
trying,
don't think,
we've done that, so I'm just
well,
trying to
yes,
avoid
but
doing it again.
Are you talking about specifically the Sabine parcel or other parks?
No, I just worried that, like, we design, we hire we hire a firm and we design something, and then all of a sudden, you know, some other, straight changes about the other site, and we have to like redesign the first piece because of this other constraint.
I understand what you're saying, but.
We'll lose the grant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if we don't do something, we're gonna lose the grant.
So what you're really saying is we need to move quickly, we need to move expeditiously on Sabine.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I think our park plans and our park committee realize that, Sabine exists, and it's not.
Would it be an appropriate time to talk about the timeline?
I mean, we've been clear to the public again that removing Sabine Park from the plan would not remove or diminish the classification of Sabine Park as a park in the interim. It will remain in at least its current form as a park, pending any outcome of this plan.
Right, and when a plan is in place for the 201 Sabine Park, it will dramatically increase the amount of open space that's there now. I mean, that is definitely what's going to happen.
But I do again want to loop back to the budget. We're at a $116,000 deficit. We have an interim borough manager. We voted down having some surplus, and the question was, if we're going to do that, what are we going to give up? The master park plan could very well be it.
The master park plan is currently no cost to the borough.
Right now.
No,
but it's going to be.
Implementing it might be something that has to be put down the road further, but I think it still makes sense to have the plan done because we've got a grant for it.
Yeah. Jean, did you want to talk about the timeline of the grant?
Yeah, sure. Let me bring it up.
Or the park process, I should say.
DCNR had really recommended that we start the contract with a consultant January 1st. Obviously, with our current situation and there's staffing shortage, that's not possible. But they did say that if we can be clear in our timeline, and it's something close to that should be workable. So I put together a rough timeline to present to DCNR, and I just wanted to get council's feedback on that just because it does kind of, I know it will require some staff input, especially so tonight we're going to need a decision on the inclusion of Sabine Park in the scope of work, whether we're going to remove that or not. And then November 20th, we would need the dated scope of work and RFP and submit that to DCNR for review. And then December 15th, we would need the required documents, the grant documents, which is the timeline, the budget, the NDI forms, and the title forms submitted to DCNR for review. And those are documents that they are going to need before they can approve the scope of work and RFP. And then on December 22nd, put the RFP out to bid. And then February 1st, we can do a consultant selection at the council workshop meeting.
I think staff's seen, you guys have seen these, right, at this timeline? Okay. Any concerns with that proposed timeline?
Yeah, you don't look at me.
It's just another thing.
I mean, and just one follow-up comment is that if we're to implement the master park plan, we're gonna need some heavy grant money to do this. Sure. It's not gonna be done, with like throwing a bomb.
Well, that's why we put it in the budget.
No,
for a grant person.
And that's part of the reason why we're doing this is because having the plan in place makes it a lot easier to apply for grants. So one of the reasons why Samantha pursued this process in the first place.
But we also, folks, have an interim manager. We've had 3 managers in 2023. We talked about, and now again, we're running at a deficit this year. The bridge is the #1 priority of the community and council. What can get pushed down the road? You know, can we reopen this at July 1, perhaps? By that time, hopefully we have an office manager, we have a permanent seated borough manager who has their sea legs.
But Cindy, we've been approved for the grant. And so this project is almost completely funded. It's also any shortfall that we had is also covered by the PICO grant. So this is money that we already have.
I get it, it's the operational cost.
So I here's my question. I think I know where you're going. So here's my question. Is there a way council can support the office? Can we fill out some of these things? Can we work on these things? No, I'm serious. Or the master park?
I was going to say, I mean, Gene, the Master Park Plan Committee has been very active, and they've been very progressive about this whole process. So, I mean, they've done a lot of the legwork. So, I mean, I feel confident that we can get the plan together, and we don't have to make any decisions about, you know, what projects we're going to fund at this time. We're just trying to get the plan done. So we're not committing ourselves right now to like, oh, we have to like spend this amount of money on this project. We're just trying to get the plan together. So, and I feel like Jean's really taking this on as like, she's really spearheaded this whole movement. I feel confident that we can like make this happen.
We're going to have a consultant on board. Right?
Yeah.
Well,
that's what's going on.
July 1. We don't have a borough manager. We have an interim borough manager.
No.
We're not.
No. For the Master Park, to hire a consultant.
I thought you meant for the grant. Gene, you've done so much work on this, and I'm not trying to derail it. I'm just saying, is there any way we can push this to a July 1?
No, DCNR is telling us that in order to keep the grant money, we need to move on a tight deadline.
They were very.
This is why we're making this change.
Yeah, this is just a plan. This is not.
This is just the plan. The spending is at least another year out.
We have the money to do the plan.
We're looking at spending, you know, at 2025 in the earliest.
It's not the spending, folks. It's the operational cost.
I know, you're worried right now about the time that this is taking for the office. So Alan was just saying.
They're largely handling most of it. Yeah.
So that's the case, then I'm fine with that. I share your concern, Cindy, but if that's what's happening.
And I appreciate you looking out for us too.
Yeah, look, if you both are telling me that's
Alan's going to do it.
Okay, that's not what we're not saying, but if Alan's volunteer, and I know, Gene, you have done the lion's share of this, but there comes a point where it does fall in the office. You know, we can only do so much.
It's also, I mean, we do have a whole master park plan study committee, and we have really come together to kind of draw on each other's skill sets to kind of put this together. You know, Michael has really been instrumental in revising the scope of work to get it to where it needs to be. And then just setting up that meeting to get their feedback has been really helpful, just to figure out what our next steps are. And I think these documents I think we can kind of check those off, and I'm happy to do as much of it as I can. I do think that things like the timeline, we do need the office's feedback and the council's feedback as to if that's something that works for you. So I just wanted to get your feedback on the timeline.
Sounds like we're comfortable with the timeline. All right. Yeah, so we have the motion to approve to remove Sabine Park from the scope of work. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right, that concludes our consideration items. Information items, monthly reports have been filed in the packet. Any new business or old business? Committee reports. So we have a new committee report since our last meeting. Okay. I'm not seeing any new committee reports. Any comments for the good of council?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I do have some committee reports.
Yeah, all right.
Just for the Active Transportation Committee.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to report on the Active Transportation Steering Committee. So Narberth Borough and Lower Merion Township is collaborating with Montgomery County Planning Commission on an active transportation plan. We're basically seeking to improve pedestrian and bicycle connectivity throughout the community. And we had a meeting on September 13th, 2023 this year. And we basically reviewed a comprehensive audit of the current and planned active transportation networks, policies and programs, as well as demographic information. So what improvements are we looking at for 2024? They're looking at targeted pedestrian infrastructure in the region and the Mainline Greenway, which is going to be the eastern segment from City Avenue and the Kenwood Heritage Trail to Haverford College. And right now, they're putting out a community survey, and the purpose is to gain insights into the needs and challenges and preferences of our community regarding active transportation. That will go up on, it's actually already up on the website. It will also be in the Borough newsletter on Friday, and it will go out in social media as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jean? All right. In that case, let's move once again to comments for the good of council. Any further comments? All right. We will have a brief executive session to talk about a potential legal matter and a question about employee matter, I guess. And we do not anticipate returning for a vote. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, we are voting to adjourn. All those in favor? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, folks. I'm gonna take, let's say, 10:40. Do people need a break? Guys?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay.